When this boy arrives at the Empire's finest academy with his parents to apply, they don't even make it to the entrance. Two noble brats immediately block their path, sneering that commoners have no place at Arcanist Academy. And just to provoke something, they shove his mother so hard she falls to the ground. Lewis is ready to snap right there and teach them a lesson, but his parents stop him. They tell him to focus on the entrance exam, not waste everything on a fight. So he holds back. Seeing no reaction, the bullies look disappointed. They were hoping for an excuse to beat up a commoner for fun, but that chance slips away. What they don't know is that deep down, Louis makes a promise to himself. Once he gets into the academy, he's gonna make those nobles pay. Without wasting another second, he heads straight to the exam site. Thousands of applicants are already there, and most of them are older than him. But honestly, that doesn't bother him at all. Then the principal appears and announces the start of the entrance exam. The first test is to climb the stairs guarded by the seniors of the academy. The first exam passes are placed behind these guards, and only a total of 1,000 applicants will pass. The exam works on a first-come, first-served basis, and once the passes run out, the exam will end. With that, he begins the exam. Every kid starts running up the stairs, thinking this test will be a piece of cake. But suddenly, a very evil senior stands up and introduces everyone to hell. He releases something dark, something red, which bursts throughout the applicants' bodies, terrifying them and sending many to the ground, their numbers echoing in the air with disqualified branded across them. The other kids behind them are confused, not understanding what just happened. But our boy knows exactly what it is. In the middle of the chaos, our hero walks forward and tells everyone that what just happened wasn't an attack. The senior only released his aura to intimidate them. Anyone weak-minded or weak-willed would stumble because of fear. The senior instantly notices our boy, recognizing that he is different, that he has some backbone. But there are still plenty of talented people out there, and the senior doesn't want a commoner mixing with them. Our boy immediately dislikes this bully. The senior says that since a commoner is here, he will make him feel it. He unleashes another part of his aura, bigger and even scarier this time. Weak-willed applicants feel the pain and fear, but for Lewis, it's nothing. He stands on the stairs, smirking at the senior, thinking that this killing intent is weak, enough to scare ordinary people, but for him, who has seen the cruelty of the world and trained hard, it is nothing. Our boy then unleashes his martial arts and rushes up the stairs, countering the senior's terrifying aura with his own strong-minded abilities. Anger burns in him because he wants to show the nobles what true killing intent looks like. He flies straight toward the senior, making a punch-like gesture as every other applicant watches in shock and horror. Even the senior is confused that a commoner can bypass his aura. But right before reaching his face, Louis stops his punch and notices that the senior is now sweating. All the people gasp, amazed that the boy is only 13 or 14, yet he possesses so much power that he not only withstands the senior's killing intent, but even throws a punch at him, all without using any magic. Our hero doesn't care about their astonishment. He passes by the senior and grabs his exam pass, muttering that he is just too tired of all this. The senior does not take kindly to the disrespect. He immediately becomes enraged and throws another punch at Louis, but at the very last moment, Louis blocks it again, leaving the senior both scared and confused. A mere commoner has blocked his smash without even touching magic. Just then, the principal intervenes. He announces that our hero is the first to pass the exam and reminds everyone that at this academy, all students are treated equally, whether noble or commoner. They are all humans first, before anything else. Hearing this, the senior bows, and even Louis nods in acknowledgement. The principal then marches up to Louis and congratulates him. Suddenly he notices our hero's hair color. He mentions that it is quite concerning, though he refuses to reveal exactly why. Louis does not like what he hears, and he feels a sharp sense of alarm. Still, he composes himself and asks the principal what he means. The principal cuts him off and leans closer with a stern look, saying that if our hero is admitted, he will personally prepare a magic potion to hide his unique traits. Our hero does not fully understand this, and for a moment he suspects the principal might be trying to test or unsettle him. He steadies himself again and decides he will deal with that later. Right now, he needs to focus on the second test. With that, our hero walks away, leaving the principal behind. The noble he defeated earlier stands nearby, burning with anger. It is the first time the principal has ever stepped into an exam like that, and he did it to protect a commoner. The noble swears he will take revenge for the humiliation Louis caused him. Soon, everyone who passes the first test is led to the second training ground, an indoor arena. Out of 20,000 examinees, only 1,000 remain, and most of them are nobles who received elite training. Almost no commoners are left. Louis walks behind the group when someone suddenly bumps into him. It is another noble bully. He sneers and says no one will help our hero next time, and he throws in an elitist insult for good measure. Louis stays calm and shows no reaction. The bully's lackey adds that if the principal had not stepped in earlier, our hero would have been disqualified. This time our hero responds. He calls the noble an idiot and says the Grandmaster Principal has far better judgment than low-level nobles like them. The bully does not like being spoken to that way and threatens to knock Louis out. Our hero only smirks, which makes the noble even angrier. The bully swings a punch at his face, but at the last second, Louis moves. He executes a precise martial arts technique that sends a shock through the bully's body. He uses meridian severance, a spiral point strike that disrupts the body's flow, and the noble is sent flying away like a stupid parrot. The other bullies rush to their fallen friend, and the scene quickly draws everyone's attention. The noble who was just beaten struggles to stand. He realizes he cannot feel his arm, and the rest of his body barely responds. Panic fills his face. He accuses our hero of using poison and threatens to report him to the authorities right away. Louis calmly calls him foolish and says he did not use any poison at all. He only used martial arts. The truth is, our hero has been holding back because he promised his mother he would not cause trouble. Still, he has limits. Anyone who bullies him will face the same outcome, or even worse. Our hero believes in one simple rule. If someone dares to hit another person, they must be ready to get hit back. He raises his fist to strike again, but someone suddenly grabs his arm and stops him. It is the cool golden boy, Lord Kane, and he argues that since they are still in the middle of the exam, they need to behave. If Louis keeps fighting, he will be disqualified. Those words snap our hero back to reality. He pulls his hand free from Kane's grip and shoots him an annoyed look before turning away. Kane then faces the shouting bullies. He gives them a cold, warning stare and tells them to be quiet and back off. The bullies fall silent and retreat, though the hatred in their eyes remains. Louis watches Kane carefully, and he thinks Kane is just like the other nobles, using his status to control people. But Kane suddenly speaks and says our hero is strong and brave. He even suggests they should form a team if Louis is willing. Before Louis can respond, a group of girls rushes toward Kane, begging him to team up with them because they admire him. Soon, even some boys crowd around him, acting like excited fans. Our hero keeps everything in mind, but he does not have much time to think. Suddenly, a light tornado forms in the center of the arena, and Principal Smith appears inside it. He announces that the second stage of the entrance exam is a power test. Before anyone can react, a strange glow burns on their chests. The applicants look down in confusion, unsure of what is happening. Kane quickly realizes it is an earth attribute ability. In the next second, an intense heaviness crashes down on all of them. Their bodies feel like they are carrying massive weights. Many struggle to stay on their feet. Even Kane grits his teeth as he fights to stand upright. Then he notices something shocking. Someone is walking forward as if nothing is wrong. Kane forces himself to look ahead, and there he sees Louis calmly stepping onto the stage, ready for the next challenge. Principal Smith watches in surprise, but there is also clear satisfaction in his eyes. Once again, our hero is the first to move forward. Despite the pressure and the overwhelming weight, he walks as if nothing is holding him back. Even after 3 to 4 years of martial training, the pressure and pain are barely tolerable for most of the students, and even grow heavier with time. Kane feels the strain in his bones. So when he sees Louis standing there without formal training and without even shaking, he cannot understand what level of skill our hero truly has. Principal Smith then announces that only the examinees who are still standing can move on to the next test. He waves his hand and reveals several weapons, telling them that anyone who wants one can pick it up. Our hero calmly walks over and chooses a solid sword for himself, while many other contestants struggle just to stay upright, let alone grab a weapon. Then the next phase of the exam begins, and there is an unexpected twist. Principal Smith announces the appearance of bound life forms. The students look confused. Before anyone can ask questions, the principal disappears. Someone suddenly shouts for everyone to look up. When they raise their heads, they see glowing blue creatures dropping from above and landing all around the arena. They look soft and bouncy, almost like jelly. They seem harmless at first, especially compared to the seniors from earlier. The rules are quickly announced. Hitting a slime earns 1 point. Dodging it earns 2 points. Killing one earns 5 points. Each student's rank depends on the points they collect, and only the top 100 will advance. At first, some students laugh and call the slimes weak and easy. They rush into attack, thinking it will be simple. But the moment they strike, the slimes grow aggressive. They move faster and slam into them with surprising force. Their playful look disappears as they attack wildly, smashing into one student and then another. Panic spreads across the arena as the slimes swarm everywhere and turn the battlefield into chaos. Above, Principal Smith and the senior examiners observe everything carefully. One examiner reports that members from powerful families are participating, including talents connected to the Aranka family and the Durahan house. She also notes that there are some questionable individuals among the candidates, especially the boy who ranked first in the initial test. Principal Smith smiles and says he finds that one very interesting. However, the examiner adds that for a while now, Louis has not made a single move, and they worry he might fall behind. Other participants notice the same thing and assume he has finally given up, but that is not true. Just as a slime prepares to strike him, Louis stands calmly with his back slightly turned, fully aware of everything around him. Just as a slime is about to slam into him, our hero dodges within 2 seconds. It looks effortless, and everyone wonders how he moves so easily. The slime sparks with energy and launches another strike, this time with even more force, and several of them charge straight at him. The truth is, Louis did not come to this exam unprepared. Before arriving, he trained in extreme conditions and even asked his friends to throw rocks at him. They did not want to hurt him, but he convinced them because he wanted to test a theory. In his previous life, he formed a hypothesis that if he trained his mind to rapidly send information from the parietal lobe to the cerebellum, he could instantly calculate attack paths and react without delay. If he could constantly calculate trajectories and respond in real time, he believed he could handle any attack. So he stood there while rocks flew at him, and he activated his martial art technique. He calculated the trajectory of each rock and dodged them all with sharp precision. His friends were stunned and rushed toward him, asking what he just did. Lewis told them he used a combat method called void combat calculation. They did not fully understand, but for him, it proved his theory worked. Now, during the second exam, our hero activates void combat calculation again. As the slimes rush toward him, he calculates their speed and direction in his head. They move fast and hit hard, but the kicker is that they can only travel in straight lines. That makes the angles simple to predict. He calmly shifts his steps and dodges every single attack, earning 8 points in seconds. Then he draws his sword and uses a martial art move called Force Slash. His blade cuts through the slimes cleanly, splitting them apart, and he gets even more points. Kane watches in shock, and even the examiners glance at Principal Smith in surprise. They cannot believe how accurately Louis predicts the movements. Kane feels excited. He now understands that Louis is no ordinary commoner. He is a true practitioner with advanced combat skills. Kane wants to team up with him, especially now because it'll be beneficial for him. Another slime charges at our hero, but just as our hero prepares to strike another slime, someone interrupts him, and they clash for the same target. Louis frowns, thinking Kane is stealing his kill. Kane quickly explains that he is not stealing from our hero, but from others, and then he properly introduces himself. He suggests they should gather points together. Louis hesitates because trust is rare in this arena. Kane grins and says they should turn it into a competition and see who earns more points. This gets our hero attention, and he agrees, betting that the loser must do whatever the winner says. He then grips his sword and says he will show what he can really do. As they stand in the arena back to back, jealous nobles see a chance to eliminate the commoner while scoring points. One of them fires arrows at Louis. Louis prepares to counter, but before anyone understands what happens, the arrows reach him. The crowd gasps, thinking he has been hit, but our hero stands still. The arrows never pierce him. He has caught all three with his bare hands. The bullies stare in disbelief. Kane immediately asks if he is all right, furious that they are fighting dirty. The archer feels insulted when Kane calls him disgraceful. He activates a magic technique called double arrow edge and fires again. Kane dodges and slices most of the arrows out of the air with his sword, but one slips through and speeds toward him, about to strike. Blood splatters as Kane watches in shock, fully expecting the arrow to pierce him. He braces himself for the impact, but it never comes. When he opens his eyes, he sees Louis standing in front of him, holding the arrow firmly in his hand and his hand oozing blood. Louis asks Kane to calm down because the attack was actually aimed at our hero all along. Up above, one of the examiners comments that the attack clearly carried malicious intent and asks Principal Smith if the bullies should be disqualified. Principal Smith calmly tells them to wait. He says the bullies will remove themselves soon enough. Besides, he wants to observe further and later address responsibility for what happened during the exam. He also asks the examiner to prepare healing potions because he has an inkling that Louis is about to break some bones. Our hero asks Kane if he has heard of baseball, but in this world, they obviously have not, but Louis wants to still show him. Another slime charges straight at our hero. He swings his sword like a bat, thunder flashing along the blade and smashes the slime hard. It flies toward the bullies and crashes into them. One of them takes the full hit, breaks his ribs, and falls off the stage. He is instantly disqualified. Louis does not stop. He rushes toward the remaining bullies, who are still frozen in shock after seeing their leader taken out so easily. One of them turns too late. Louis flips over his head and kicks a slime ball straight into his face. The impact crushes against him, bruises his teeth, and sends him flying off the stage, earning another disqualification. Now only one bully remains. He sweats nervously, and cannot tell where our hero will strike next. Panic takes over him. Suddenly, our hero appears behind him and taunts him to turn around. Even at this moment, the bully refuses to apologize. He keeps insulting our hero, claiming that seniors are more knowledgeable and that commoners should know their place. He does not notice someone step in front of him. In the next second, he trips and tumbles off the stage. The one who trips him is Kane. With that fall, the last bully is disqualified as well. Kane walks over and thanks Louis. Kane notices Louis's injured hand from catching the arrow, but now it's wrapped in a bandage. They share a high five, and our hero admits that Kane is actually a decent person for a noble. The two boys keep running as slimes chase them. While moving, Kane tells Louis not to compare him to the other nobles because he is not like them. He explains that there are many great families in the Empire, and he belongs to one called the Aranka family. Great families are clans that have produced several Grand Masters and sages. Because of that, they hold huge influence and power. Sometimes their authority even rivals the royal family, the nobility, and the arcanists' associations. These names and titles are new and fascinating to Louis, and he keeps them in mind as they continue fighting. Meanwhile, the bullies watch Louis battle with sharp focus. Seeing him fight so well fills them with jealousy and anger. They refuse to let someone they see as Lowborn take their points, so they launch an attack toward Louis and Kane. At the same time, Kane's loyal followers panic when they see their young lord being targeted, and they rush in to protect him. Within moments, chaos erupts around Louis and Kane. Students who came to prove themselves now turn on each other. The arena becomes a free-for-all, with everyone fighting everyone. Not far away, Faye observes the situation and finds it interesting. She calls her friend Miliana and tells her to join her so they can challenge the other nobles. Louis keeps dodging slimes using his martial art techniques, but he also notices how students are now targeting one another. He realizes that if he keeps scoring higher, more trouble will come his way. That is when he sees Miliana cutting through nobles with ease. The Fae fights skillfully as well, and beside her is a red-haired boy, Neil Gunn, who looks almost insane. The boy swings a hammer wildly and punches people aside, shouting that beating them is more fun than fighting slimes. He causes chaos across the arena and knocks down several opponents in a frenzy. Above them, Principal Smith and the examiners watch closely. One examiner suggests stopping the fight, worried that too many nobles might get disqualified. Principal Smith disagrees. He says watching young talents clash is entertaining. Another examiner argues that losing too many noble candidates could cause problems. Principal Smith brushes off the concern. He says he does not care about public opinion and wants to see how it ends. Then, without warning, he steps into the center of the arena and ends the second exam. He announces that the scores and rankings of all qualified candidates will be revealed later. He lifts the earth magic effect, and healing potions are distributed to everyone. Louis studies the potion with interest. Even a basic healing potion costs 3 silver coins, which is far too expensive for him. Kane notices his expression and asks what is wrong. Then he jokes that he will not bully Louis even if he wins. Soon after, Principal Smith releases the rankings. The nobles look pleased when they realize that Louis's name does not appear on the list. But the truth is that the top 5 examinees have broken all previous records, and Principal Smith announces their names separately. He declares that 5th place goes to Miliana Royce, 4th place belongs to Kane Aranka, and 3rd place goes to Faye Durahan. With 887 points, Louis takes 2nd place and Kane is completely shocked. Not only because Louis scored higher than him, but because a commoner has never fought like that before. Kane accepts his defeat gracefully, admitting he has lost the bet, and asks Louis what he wants him to do. Louis simply says he will tell him after the exam. Then Principal Smith announces 1st place. With a record-breaking 888 points, it goes to the same red-haired maniac who was rampaging earlier. Neil is still grinning like he was during the fight. Everyone whispers about how terrifyingly strong he is, especially since he is also a commoner who ranked above even the Durahan heir. Miliana looks worried as she notices Faye trembling with anger, but Faye quickly swallows it down and declares that she would love to have a match with someone that strong. Meanwhile, many seniors are furious that the newcomer nobles have lost to mere commoners. The examiner comments that coming in 2nd place is unprecedented since the Academy's founding days, and the kicker is that both of these students are from an orphanage as well. Principal Smith explains that the Arcanist Association runs the orphanage because true strength lies within the masses, and it has nothing to do with social status, as some people believe. He tells everyone who passed the exam to proceed to the next venue. As they walk, Kane mentions that Louis was so close to 1st place, and he wonders who is truly the strongest between them. Louis, however, is not worried or curious about answering the question. Soon, they all arrive at the Academy's training ground. Principal Smith announces that the final exam is the survival test, an emblem battle royale, and he begins distributing the emblems to everyone. Everyone's goal is to collect as many emblems as possible, and any method is allowed to do that. Examinees who lose their emblems are immediately disqualified, and only the top 10, based on the final count, will gain admission to the Academy. Kane looks at his new friend and says that they're going to act separately for now, giving him a tip that those who ranked higher earlier will be targeted, so he needs to be extra careful. Louis promises that he will survive no matter what. He knows for a fact that they announced the 2nd exam rankings just to create this exact situation. Hearing this, Principal Smith just smirks and tells everyone to display their abilities, because only the best will survive in the end. As the exam starts, Louis wanders through the forest, thinking about how admission is just one step away, so he needs to win no matter what. Suddenly, someone stops and steps in front of him. It's one of the nobles, an NPC who charges at him, claiming Louis humiliated all the nobles in the previous exam. When Louis turns around, he notices 2 more bullies also charging at him. No one is going to protect him for now, but they don't know that Louis does not need protection from anyone. In fact, these bullies need protection from Louis. Suddenly, Louis sees a guy standing on top of a tree aiming his bow at him, and he realizes the reputation staff had leaked his location since everyone is there. The bullies attack Louis one by one, but he dodges all of their attacks skillfully. Suddenly he senses a powerful attack coming at him, and he has to dodge it using his sword, but he is confused because he doesn't recognize what it is. Just then, the bully charges at him, even threatening to kill him, but Lewis is not ready to give up. He fights all of the bullies, and then again, one of those powerful attacks comes at him, and he dodges it once more, but he's irritated about it. Now one of the NPCs, basically arrows flying with magic, laughs at Lewis because he doesn't even use magic. But the next second, he gets frustrated as Lewis keeps dodging. On the other hand, Louis is a bit nervous because he cannot calculate the magic's trajectory, so he has to rely on his martial arts techniques. He uses a move called Sen no Sen, which is a strike before the enemy, and uses their own power against them. Just then, the enemy orders all his fellows to attack at once, and everyone charges at our hero. This time he is ready. He moves through them, dodging one by one, and with his sword, he turns their attacks back on them, making them hit each other instead of him. Even when a guy throws arrows with magic, Louis dodges at the last second, causing another bully to get struck instead. He tosses the injured bully like trash and uses a spear to hit the guy on top of the tree. One by one, he defeats all of them and collects their emblems, laughing at his victory. Still, one fighter urges his allies to attack again, but this time Cain takes his bow and makes him fall to the ground. Cain is sitting on the tree, casually watching our hero, noticing that he cannot use magic. The fighters are surprised because Cain shouldn't even be there, but he reveals he defeated all of them and forced them to reveal the attack plan. The bully keeps shouting, and Cain hits him in the head with the bow until he finally quiets down. Cain leaps from the tree, and Lewis remarks that he's safe. Cain says they're just low-level nobles with newly learned magic, so it was a piece of cake for him. He hands our hero the last emblem he had gathered, but then comes over and says that if this keeps happening, it will be too troublesome for Lewis and offers to help. Our hero declines, saying he will handle his problems himself. All of this is watched by Faye, who claps, honoring Lewis's integrity and honor. But she isn't here to chat. She goes straight to the point and asks our hero to fight her. Cain quickly tells Lewis that she is the granddaughter of the Grand Master of the Durahan family. Our hero asks Cain if he has ever fought her before. Cain hesitates for a moment and denies having any kind of friendship with her, but admits that they have fought. He adds that he let his guard down a little during their match. Louis immediately teases him, implying that he must have lost, and Cain starts defending himself. Before their banter can continue, Faye interrupts them, telling them to stop their little bromance and quit flirting. She challenges our hero once again. Cain warns Lewis that she can already use magic and that her skill level is at the apprentice stage, which is very high for their age. He advises our hero to ignore her and focus on collecting emblems instead. Faye starts mocking them, clearly annoyed, accusing the two boys of planning to run away. She claims Cain is poisoning Louis' confidence because he knows our hero cannot win. She even calls Lewis a coward. That irritates him. Cain is annoyed as well, but Lewis steps forward, his pride stirred. He says he has always wanted to see how a great family fights, so he will accept the challenge. Faye smirks and says she likes his enthusiasm. To be fair, she announces that she will not use magic against him. The next second, without hesitation, she charges and unleashes her secret technique, Lance Slam, aiming straight at our hero. Our hero does not move. The lance strikes him, or so it seems. Faye smiles not because she hit him, but because at the last possible moment, our hero slightly shifts his body and catches the lance against his bicep. Faye pulls her weapon back, spins it in a sharp 360-degree motion, forcing our hero to release it, and immediately launches another lance slam. Once again, Lewis narrowly dodges the attack. Far away, the examiners watch the fight closely. They comment that it has been a long time since they have seen the Durahan family's spear techniques. They also note that Faye's speed and strength are impressive, calling her a true genius. However, the examiners note that Lewis is impressive as well, and they wager on how long he will last. One of them thinks he will lose quite soon. Then they turn to the principal, asking who he thinks will win. The principal honestly says that he likes the new boy, but he cannot beat Faye because a battle is a clash of body and will. Right now, our hero does not have much experience. Meanwhile, on the battleground, dust rises from the fight, and inside it, Faye lunges at our hero. He starts defending himself, dodging all her attacks. He finally finds an opening and strikes back at Faye, making her almost drop her spear. This irritates her, and our hero leaps over her head, landing behind her. She comments that she cannot believe he has dodged everything. Even Cain from the Aranka family could not handle that. But Louis does not find it difficult. If he observes carefully, everything becomes easy. Faye takes it upon herself, and with a challenge, launches her secret lance technique, Lance Crescent Fall, at Lewis. He instantly scans the attack, thinking that spear techniques include threats, sweeps, defense, and suppression, combined with reach, making it quite troublesome. Just as he faces a momentary difficulty, he also notices several weaknesses in using the spear. For example, vulnerability in close combat. All he needs to do is find the right time, get close to Faye, and attack. When he finds the moment, he launches an attack, but Faye instantly dodges. She rushes at him, declaring her family's lance has no weaknesses, and creates a tornado with her weapon. The examiners note that Faye truly has remarkable talent. Even the Durahan family's Grand Master learned this technique at age 16. Combining magic with spear techniques, Faye surpasses all her colleagues. The boys appear to have lost for now, but the truth is, our hero has some tricks up his sleeve as well. He uses swordnet technique. Apparently, the other weakness of the spear technique is the high stamina consumption. If our hero keeps defending accurately, an opening will eventually appear. But what he doesn't realize is that his sword is breaking. It irritates Faye that Louis is still fighting. Finally, he finds an opening and launches an attack at Faye, but at that moment his sword breaks, confusing everyone. Faye even calls it impressive, because if his sword hadn't broken, he would have successfully executed a counterattack while Louis thinks his luck is terrible. Faye likely realizes that Louis is holding back, but he apologizes, saying it's a bad habit because he likes to observe before going all out. Now that he has observed everything, it's getting serious. Faye thinks they cannot continue fighting because his weapon is broken, but Louis is ready. He is better with his fists. They both prepare for the next move. Faye launches an attack at our hero, a spinning charge technique. Kane warns that if Louis takes it head-on, he will be seriously injured. But our hero, fully in his martial arts zone, successfully stops Faye's spear at the very last moment with his bare hands. The examiners watching from afar are confused because Faye's attack is supposed to have a defense-penetrating effect, yet nothing like that happens, and they cannot understand what the boy does to stop the spear so easily. Principal Smith is impressed and speechless, but Faye is not done yet. She uses her leg to strike and free her spear from his grip, taking hold of it again. She charges once more, this time unleashing a stronger attack that strikes from all sides at once. However, Louis is in a slowed, focused state, and with only his hands, he deflects every strike. Faye is confused, and Principal Smith is shocked because he realizes that our hero is countering the spear technique with a special method he has never seen before. The Durahan family's spinning spear technique is one of the most famous in their world, and stopping it like this means the boy is truly extraordinary. Finally, our hero attacks back, forcing Faye to step away. This angers her, and she bluntly asks about the strange technique. Our hero answers honestly, saying it is simply part of his martial arts, and that he adds a twist at the exact moment of contact to cancel out the spear's rotational force. The explanation goes over Faye's head, and she understands nothing. With that, our hero moves toward her, saying he will show her through action. He begins shifting in all directions while Faye tries to track and strike him. Watching from afar, Kane thinks it looks like an illusion, because Louis moves like a butterfly in flight. Faye feels as if Louis is right in front of her, yet whenever she attacks, he has already shifted to another position. He almost seems to be flying. Meanwhile, our hero is determined to demonstrate his style. The technique he uses now is called the butterfly step, an elegant footwork style inspired by a legendary boxer, with rapid, light movements and an unpredictable rhythm that is perfect for fighting Faye. Our hero finally sees another opening and attacks Faye. He punches her, sending her flying backward. Kane watches from afar, unable to believe his eyes, and even Principal Smith thinks it is unexpected that Louis is able to deal such heavy damage to Faye. The examiners note that even without magic, very few people can defeat Faye in pure combat skill, and perhaps this boy truly is a genius in hand-to-hand fighting. But Faye is furious because she is not finished yet. She rises and declares that she comes from a great family with an unbreakable fighting spirit, and she cannot lose so easily. She throws her spear aside, which confuses Louis, because now they are both entering close hand-to-hand combat. Faye rushes toward him, and our hero uses martial arts techniques like Wing Chun and Pak Sao to defend himself against her crushing fist. Even so, his defense is not perfect, and Faye manages to injure his hand. Instead of getting angry, he smiles and brushes off the pain. Faye reminds him that her family is not built on weakness. She then unleashes Crushing Fist, level 3, but this time our hero is ready. He shifts into boxing techniques, and the two exchange fierce blows. Louis feels exhilarated, and something dark inside him begins to stir. He does not fight for the sake of violence, but because he enjoys using his strength to its fullest. His presence grows intense as he steps right in front of Faye, releasing a dangerous aura that makes her freeze for a moment. She tries to block his attack with her hands, but it is not enough. Louis strikes her, sending her flying into a nearby tree. Principal Smith does not like the look of this technique at all. The remaining students watching the fight cannot believe that a commoner possesses such power. Suddenly, one of them begins to feel sick and starts shivering, realizing that the sensation comes from the overwhelming aura our hero is releasing. These are the same bullies who conspired against our hero earlier, and they are furious because no one expected a commoner to be this powerful. The other boy, who was vomiting just moments ago, feels sick to his stomach as he thinks that they must eliminate our hero now. If the legend is true, then they cannot let him live. From a distance, they watch as Louis seems almost like a maniac, marching and running toward Faye, who is already injured and exhausted. She barely has time to defend herself before Louis throws another punch, sending her flying once again. He charges at her while she is still on the ground. It is clear that his power and speed are on a completely different level, and there is no way she can win in this state. He prepares to strike, and at the very last second, fearing for her life, she uses her magic martial arcane to protect herself and counterattack. The impact sends both of them flying apart. Suddenly, our hero returns to his calm and normal self. He looks down at his injured hands and silently reflects on the power of magic. Kane rushes over and asks if he is all right. Our hero answers that he is fine, though he is not sure about Faye. Just then, the bullies who had been hiding behind the trees step forward and accuse our hero of losing his emblem, declaring that he is disqualified from the game. Louis looks down and realizes that his emblem has been burned to ashes. Kane immediately steps in to defend him, insisting that it was an accident. The bully smirks and says that the principal has seen everything, so Kane will not be able to help a commoner cheat today. He steps forward, tells our hero to drop everything, and orders him to leave because he is ruining the exam. He even calls our hero trash who should disappear, but Faye suddenly tells them to stop. Everyone turns to look at her. Louis is shocked to see that she is this injured and still standing. The bully asks if she is really trying to protect a commoner, warning her that she will be disqualified for breaking the rules. Faye does not care about his opinion. She admits that our hero earned his point, and that she was the one who accidentally used magic. She apologizes for it. Kane cannot believe what he is hearing. The great Faye apologizing to our hero. But Louis apologizes as well, saying that he was the one who lost control earlier, so he should be the one saying sorry. Faye accepts his apology, though she is still upset about losing. She says that he forced her to use magic. Still, she wants a rematch before they officially enroll. The bully laughs, reminding them that he already has 4 emblems, and that Louis will not even qualify. But in the next moment, Faye tears a strip of cloth from her outfit and hands it to Louis. It represents the 14 emblems she has collected. Just like that, our hero is suddenly ahead of the bullies. Before leaving, she teases Kane and tells the bullies that weak people should not pass, and those who deserve it should not fail. She refuses to let such injustice happen. Then she lifts her spear and reminds them that only 10 people can pass. Her new goal is to collect more than 14 emblems to guarantee her place. Kane grins and says he was thinking the same thing. The two of them rush back into the competition, determined to gather more emblems, qualify for the academy, and settle their ridiculous bet. Our hero watches his 2 new allies run off, a faint smile on his face. He does not notice that Principal Smith and an examiner are descending from the sky to speak with him. The principal approaches our hero and calmly explains that since his emblem has been burned, he is disqualified and will be escorted out. Louis accepts this without any argument. Meanwhile, the bully clenches his fists and mutters that this is not over. He turns to his friend and says he never wants to see Louis's face again. But his friend reminds him that if Faye and the others manage to defeat enough opponents, then Louis might still find a way to pass. The bully, however, is too consumed by hatred to think clearly. He begins to imagine that if an examinee were to die in an accident during the exam, it would not seem strange at all, especially if that examinee is a commoner. In that case, no one would care. His friend silently encourages the thought, remembering the terrifying sensation he felt earlier from our hero aura. He is convinced that what our hero carries inside him is not normal, that there is something dark hidden within him. Later, our hero hands over the collected emblems to the examiner, thinking about how his martial arts are certainly strong, but not that powerful in front of magic. He looks at the academy and reflects on the fact that he really wanted to come here to learn how to fuse martial arts and magic, but right now it seems quite difficult. Later, at night, he leaves, worrying about his clothes, which are ripped and dirty, and he thinks about how his mom is going to worry about him. He debates whether he should tell her the truth or just lie, when he doesn't notice a man in a hoodie passing by him. In the next second, as Louis is lost in thought, the hooded ninja attacks and stabs him from behind. Louis reacts quickly, kicking the attacker away. The ninja asks how he noticed, but Louis can smell the blood from far away, especially bloodlust. Suddenly, the ninja is joined by another friend, who mocks our hero for being too calm for someone about to die. Our hero notes that all these opponents look fairly skilled, so he needs to go all out, especially the one watching from afar, who looks particularly dangerous. Just then, the first ninja moves in to stab our hero, but once again, Louis is quick to dodge all of the stabbing attacks. He disarms the ninja, taking the dagger from his hand and causing him to fall to the ground. The ninja tries to kick Louis using a technique, but it fails as well, and he jumps back to regroup with his other friends. He comments on our hero's superhuman perception and advanced combat techniques, noting that it matches the intel he received. This makes our hero curious about what intel he is referring to, and the ninja admits that our hero's hand-to-hand combat is truly impressive, even at an apprentice level, but he is no match against magic. With that, the other ninjas form a formation and launch an attack using crossbows and wind magic. Lewis is caught off guard and barely survives as arrows pierce the trees behind him. These are the same wind arrows that were used against him earlier at the battleground with the bullies. Realizing that things are getting serious, he uses a breathing technique that harnesses the ki within his body to enhance his physical strength and explosively awaken his latent abilities. He then unleashes immense power and speed, launching at the ninjas just as they fire another magical attack. He dodges the arrows so fast that the ninjas cannot see him. Louis is quick, kicking and rolling through the assault. Our hero is on a roll, until a ninja suddenly blocks his attack, sending a sharp jolt of pain through his hand. That is when he realizes that the ninja he sensed earlier is truly strong, and even intimidating. He looks around and sees that he is completely surrounded by assassins, and all he can do now is defend as much as he can. He tries, but eventually some of their magic arrows strike him, forcing Louis to the ground. The ninjas feel relieved that Louis is finally down, because even shooting at him has exhausted them. Yet they are also surprised that, despite being just a commoner, he is far more troublesome than an average apprentice. One of them approaches him, not realizing that Louis is only pretending to be unconscious. Louis suddenly opens his eyes and unleashes hell, driving his fingers into the ninja's trachea and sending him flying away. The boss ninja cannot believe that Louis uses the age-old trick of playing dead to lure his enemy in, but he is also impressed by such composure from someone so young. Louis then raises the crossbow toward him and asks why he does not care that his apprentices are killed right in front of him. The boss coldly replies that he does not care what happens to trash. Louis fires the arrows, but the boss calmly defends himself without the slightest concern. He then uses magic to create a massive hammer, saying that if it were not for the mysterious person's orders, he would have liked to make Louis his disciple. With that, he swings the giant hammer at Louis. Louis blocks the attack at the very last moment, but the ninja still manages to send him flying away. While Louis is still in the air, the boss ninja flies up to him and once again strikes him with his magical hammer, sending him crashing violently into the ground. As he attacks, he declares that Louis's abilities surpass even those of an apprentice. But in the end, Louis is still just a beginner, and nothing compared to a high-ranked fighter like himself. As Louis lies on the ground, the assassin rushes toward him, but suddenly he senses that something is wrong. When the dust settles, he sees that Louis is already in a defensive stance. The sight shocks him, because the boy is still alive. Louis survives through sheer willpower and mental strength. He refuses to die here. The ninja, however, is determined to end his life. He forms a massive coffin-like rock, a martial arcane known as the Celestial Hammer, and hurls it at Louis. Terrified, Louis thinks about his family and his precious life. He thinks about how he wants to master magic, protect the people he loves, and change his fate no matter the cost. As these thoughts surge through him, something shifts deep inside him, and his aura begins to change. That same insane aura that emerged from him earlier begins to rise again. Instead of defending, Louis chooses to attack, forcing himself to believe that he will survive. His giant punch collides with the ninja's hammer, shocking the assassin with the sheer force behind it. A massive explosion erupts from the impact, and when the smoke clears, Louis is left on the ground, coughing. However, the ninja is not finished. He finds it strange, because it now feels as if he is fighting someone on equal footing. With Louis having unleashed his true power, the ninja finally understands why the mysterious person commissioned him to kill Louis. Still, he steps forward, approaches Louis, and raises his hammer, preparing to deliver the final blow. However, at the very last moment, a lightning tornado strikes, causing the ninja to miss his attack, and he stumbles backward. He finds himself surrounded by the swirling lightning and is confused about what is happening until it engulfs him, leaving him seriously injured. Louis watches everything from the ground, confused, as he sees Principal Smith descending from the sky. He is alert, but above all shocked. Principal Smith, on the other hand, is delighted to see Louis, pleased that he has managed to suppress his rampage. He hands Louis a magic potion to regain his strength, and Louis drinks it gracefully. Finally, after a while, the tornadoes stop tormenting the assassin ninja, and he collapses to the ground. Principal Smith marches up to him, demanding who has the authority or audacity to attack one of his examinees at the academy. The ninja, surprisingly, shows a measure of respect toward Principal Smith, admitting that even a Grand Master cannot control a monster like Louis, because this attack is literally just the beginning of what awaits Louis in his destiny. Suddenly, the ninja explodes right in front of Principal Smith and Louis, and the principal cannot immediately comprehend it. He realizes that since the ninja died by suicide, it could be the work of the Assassin Guild, who might have sent a bounty on Louis's head. Even so, he hopes he is just overthinking it. Meanwhile, Louis stands up, marveling at the fact that he is fully healed thanks to the advanced healing potion. He is genuinely happy with the results, noting that even his bones are completely restored. He then asks the principal why he always saves him whenever danger strikes, but the principal replies that he will answer that question at home. At that moment, Louis suddenly remembers something he had forgotten and panics instantly. Apparently he has passed curfew and his mother must be worried. He dashes toward his house faster than he has ever fought against bad guys. Meanwhile, Principal Smith summons a snake-like magical entity called Skyly, orders it to clean up the mess, and follows Lewis. In the town of Mantia, Northern Candria Empire, outside the orphanage, 2 gang members are harassing Lachiella, asking how much she is really pocketing from the tax money, planning to swindle her, and even trying to mock her face as she insists she is acting in the children's best interests. But the gangsters are relentless and have clearly evil intentions. Just as one man reaches to grab Lachiella, someone kicks him, knocking blood and teeth out of his mouth. It turns out Louis has finally come to save his mother, and Lachiella is ecstatic to see him. But then she notices his torn attire and becomes horrified. Before Louis can finish asking if she is okay, she rushes at him, demanding why his clothes are ripped, why there is blood, and why his face is wrapped. Embarrassed, Louis tries to brush it off, saying he got caught on a tree during the exam, but she doesn't believe him. Meanwhile, the gangster who was knocked out rises again, turning to Louis and accusing him of always breaking the rules, threatening that they will call reinforcements to fight him. Just then, Principal Smith arrives to Louis's aid, explaining that it's all a misunderstanding and introducing himself. Seeing the principal, the gangsters are terrified, realizing he is a true Grand Master. He quickly asks the gangsters to give his regards to the Lord of the Land, and both immediately grasp the underlying threat, practically running from the place. Principal Smith then turns to Lachiella, saying he would like to discuss something regarding Louis. Lachiella brings them both inside, and the principal notices the strange milestone the nobles had just mentioned. The remarkable thing is that it moves automatically without any magic. Upon closer inspection, he realizes that automatic devices are everywhere, from ceilings to floors. Even Lachiella is delighted, saying she doesn't understand how Louis made everything, but she is glad because thanks to him, their lives have become much easier. She then remarks that for the principal to visit personally, Louis must have done something notable during the exam. Principal Smith finds it amusing because, on the contrary, Louis surpassed expectations beyond imagination, and he marvels at such talent, which he has only seen once before in the Gaia scriptures. Apparently, when humanity was under the tyrannical rule of monsters, only one genius emerged, guided by the goddess. He mastered the essence of the elements, created martial arcane techniques, and 5 years later, together with his companions, defeated the monsters, saving humanity from mass extinction. The commemorative day of this victory became the foundation of their calendar, later called Liberation Day, marking humanity's triumph. In the Gaia scriptures, this hero is called the first hero. Lachiella marvels at the story, thinking of the great hero, while Louis wonders why the folk legends make no mention of such a figure. The principal clarifies that the hero appears in different forms in other scriptures, described as a man with black hair and black eyes. Hearing this, Lachiella grows quiet, protective of Louis, and he himself is shocked by her reaction. Principal Smith adds that it is a great secret known only to humanity's upper ranks, because although the hero saved humanity, he also became a victim of the madness dwelling within his heart. He began killing people, committing the unforgivable sin of murdering his own comrades, and seeing how he descended into insanity, he was erased from human history. That inner madness became a cautionary tale. Hearing this, Louis looks at his hands, recalling all the moments he felt himself losing to his own desires. Principal Smith rises, recognizing the gravity of the situation, and explains that in every country, anyone with black hair and black eyes is immediately eliminated to prevent such a threat from arising again. He turns to Louis and asks if he really thinks he can fool everyone by simply dyeing his hair. Louis's mother, Lachiella, steps forward, realizing the discussion is about her decision, and admits that she was the one who told Louis to dye his hair. She wasn't trying to hide him, but feared something terrible might happen, and personally guarantees that Louis is a good boy. Louis tells her to calm down, reasoning that if the principal intended to kill him, he would have done so already. He's here for a reason. Principal Smith smiles, impressed that a 13-year-old has resisted his inner madness and even tamed it, seeing in him the qualities of a new hero. Hearing this, Louis can't help but reflect on being considered a new hero. The principal explains that while the world seems peaceful, it's only surface level. Great darkness constantly lurks. Watching him in the exam hall, he thought legends were absurd and decided to personally guide Louis for humanity's sake. He throws an apple at Louis, who instinctively catches it without difficulty. Principal Smith adds that thanks to Faye and Kane's efforts, most of the examinees failed the final test, which means Louis passed. He personally welcomes him to the academy and offers to give him instruction under his guidance. Louis is stunned that such a grandmaster is placing his trust in him and asks if he would go insane like the legendary hero. Before he can finish, the principal snatches the apple from his hand and threatens that if that happens, he will personally end him as well. The next day, Louis is helping build a fence with his foster brother, who cannot believe that Louis actually received a personal invitation from Principal Smith. He keeps saying it's an incredible honor, but Louis knows there's more to it. Yesterday was partly a warning, though he doesn't say it aloud to avoid worrying his brother. His brother rambles on about tuition, uniforms, dormitory fees, and all the academy details, but Louis can't stop thinking about the first hero and what connection he might have to the legendary figure, considering he's just a simple noble boy. He remembers how easily the principal caught him, how he discovered the hair dye ruse, and how he threatened him. Louis wonders how much he can truly trust the principal's words. The previous night, while walking beside Principal Smith after their interaction, Louis had asked why he let his mother hear everything, knowing she would worry. The principal explained that she needed to know the truth, otherwise she would only be a burden on his path. Louis bristles at the word burden, but the principal, serious, warns that when his true identity is revealed, his whole family could be in danger. As a mother, she must understand and grow stronger, letting him face the real trials that are just beginning. With that, the principal flies away. Louis reflects and realizes the principal is right. He needs to get stronger for everyone's sake. Soon many children run toward Louis, laughing and happy. A small girl, Lana, hugs him tightly, crying, and asks if he will visit them. Louis reassures her he will, promising to return regularly and even bring some of them home during longer breaks. This is his home after all. They make a pinky promise, which Louis keeps close to his heart. Suddenly someone calls for Louis. A noble butler arrives, explaining that he serves the Aranca family, and young Master Kane wishes to invite Louis to their manor. He hands Louis the invitation, which seems authentic, showing that Kane wants to deepen their friendship before school starts. Excited, Louis accepts the invitation and steps into the carriage. At the town of Candria Empire Harzan, Louis finally emerges from the carriage as the butler bows. It is the Aranca family, one of the distinguished great families, and even in the town, their fame and prosperity are obvious. Louis is not ready for the size of the mansion before him. His mouth drops in shock, realizing that Kane really comes from a great family. As he is about to enter, someone calls his name. It is Kane, rushing toward him excitedly. He almost hugs Louis, saying they are going to be classmates. Louis congratulates him on causing quite a scene in the final exam, and thanks him because he passed only because of Faye and Kane. He says he will let the bet slide since they are now even. Kane, however, says that is a separate matter, and they should still keep the bet going. Besides, Louis already has the ability to pass. And the best part is he has Faye's seal of approval, which is rare. As they enter the house, the maids bow to Kane and Louis. Kane explains that since they couldn't really fight during the exam, he wants them to spar before school starts so they can get acquainted. He also says that since Louis wants to ask about the academy and maths beforehand, they can help with that. Louis likes the idea, but someone interrupts. The person is Kane's mother, standing on the stairs, clearly angry about who is with her son. Kane tries to protect Louis, saying he is his friend, but before he can explain, his mother silences him with a menacing look, and Kane is floored. She marches down the stairs, hurling insults at Louis, saying she always advised Kane to choose the right friends, and that the gates of the Aranca family are not for just anyone. A commoner like Louis is unworthy of being Kane's friend, an insult to their family. She says Louis should train, aim to become strong, and not hang out with poor commoners. Kane is beyond embarrassed as Louis hears the insults directly. Before he can respond, she approaches Louis, asking his purpose in approaching her son. She insults him, asking if he wants money or power, and then takes out her ring, saying it is worth a ton of gold coins and could let him live comfortably his whole life. She throws it at his feet in an insulting manner and tells him to pick it up and go home. Seeing this, Kane is embarrassed and speaks up, asking her to stop insulting his friend. He apologizes to Louis, but then he sees Louis crouching down to pick up the ring. Louis says he became friends with Kane because he recognized his ability, and if his mother thinks Kane's ability is worth so little, she should be ashamed of belittling her own son. Kane cannot believe how Louis turned his mother's words against her, and she is furious, screaming at the servants to throw Louis out of the palace. The servants rush to grab Louis, but Kane tries to stop them, arguing that Louis is even more talented than him. He reminds his mother that Louis broke past records in the exam and even beat Faye, but his mother does not believe him. She thinks a commoner surpassing the children of great families is not only unheard of, but impossible. She mocks Kane, asking if he really expects his ridiculous lies to work on her. Kane insists it's not a lie, and Louis adds that if he is around, Kane can become even stronger. This enrages Kane's mother, who cannot believe that a mere commoner dares speak in front of her. Her voice echoes through the great hall, but then the doors open, and a mysterious figure enters the palace. He directly refers to Louis, asking if he really said that if he is around, Kane would become stronger. Everyone turns to look, and Kane's mother is horrified to see her husband, the master of the Aranca family, standing there. She stutters, calling him William, and rushes to him, saying they should leave and that Louis will never catch up. But William sidesteps her and turns to his son, who bows and greets him. Louis greets him politely, realizing that Grandmaster William has an incredible aura and is on the same level as Principal Smith. His father, however, does not pay attention to Lewis's words. He turns to his son, asking if Louis's words are true. Kane confirms that Lewis's ability exceeds his own. William then decides to challenge Louis, asking him to prove it. He unleashes his insane aura with intense killing intent, so overwhelming that Louis feels like he cannot breathe and that a lion is looking straight into his soul, tearing at him. He feels William is trying to kill him, but at the very last moment, something miraculous happens. Louis feels like his whole body is being torn apart, but thankfully he manages to resist William's willpower with his own aura. His hidden strength surprises everyone. He never expected this level of power from a literal Grand Master. However, thanks to years of constantly hunting monsters, he has built enough resistance against powerful killing intent. If this is only the beginning, then there is certainly more to come. With that, Louis gathers his aura and releases it from his body with such force that William is slightly shocked. In William's eyes, Louis now looks like a terrifying dragon standing before his lion. The lion and the dragon face each other until they finally clash. Kane cannot believe the power his friend is showing. As it turns out, Louis manages to withstand the confrontation, but in the end he bows in front of William out of exhaustion. Kane rushes to his side and asks if he is okay, and Louis laughs it off. This moment finally makes William look at him more seriously. William asks him why he seeks strength. Louis answers honestly that he wants to protect his family. Without saying another word, William turns to leave. As he walks away, he tells his son that his willpower is weak and that he needs to learn a few things from Louis. Hearing this, Kane's mother cannot believe what her husband just said. She rushes after him, asking him to change his opinion, but William dismisses her completely. Seeing how terrified his mother is of her husband, Kane feels a bit of pity for her, but he pushes the thought aside. He then turns to Louis and says they should go to the training ground and begin their fun. At the training ground, Kane apologizes for his mother's behavior and for his parents' actions, but Louis dismisses it. He does say that his father is a little extreme because there is not much difference between Louis and Kane, so he should not worry. But Kane tells him that, sadly, that is the reality of being the son of such a high-level, high-rank person. His father is a meritocrat, and to be recognized by him, he needs to become much stronger. And at this pace, Louis feels more like a son of the Aranka family than he does. Louis then tries to argue that William tested his ability for Kane's sake, and that is probably his way of showing love. But that is not enough for Kane. As he looks at the sky above him, he thinks about how love has always been different between him and his father. As he reflects on his life, he realizes that he has hardly ever left this house since he was little, because all he ever did was train, eat, and sleep. His training started when he fought small monsters even when he was smaller than those monsters. His father wanted him to grow into a great sage like his grandfather. Without even understanding why, he just kept swinging his sword again and again because he wanted his father to acknowledge him. But in the end, this place always felt like a prison. He would see other children playing happily with paper planes, while he had to swing swords and fight battles he did not even understand. Sometimes it felt like even breathing required the guard's permission. Every adult around him praised him as the young master, but to him it felt like chains tightening around his neck. The tighter those chains became, the more he wanted to resist them. He wanted to sing and fly freely like a bird crossing the continent. But sadly, that dream might belong to another life. In this life, he feels too weak to stand up to his father, let alone challenge him. So all he can do for now is follow his father's expectations and grow stronger by swinging his sword, because that is the only way he believes he can eventually break those chains. Besides, his father is also a graduate of the academy he will soon attend. Kane wants to enter the academy, become stronger, and finally gain the freedom to live his own life. As he finishes speaking, he pulls out his sword and points it toward Louis. He says that he is counting on him to help him become the best, and Louis accepts the challenge instantly. On the other hand, William watches Kane and Louis fighting from afar, and he asks his butler about the investigation he had asked him to conduct earlier. The butler informs him that Louis is definitely not an ordinary boy, because according to his intelligence, during the exam he used mysterious combat techniques that no one has ever seen before. Not only did he break past records, but he was also the one who defeated Faye without using magic, while Faye herself had used magic. Moreover, he is held in high regard by the principal, who apparently even fought the Assassin Guild last night to protect Louis. Hearing this, William recognizes that Louis is no ordinary person and that he is quite the troublemaker. That is when his butler asks if he already knew about this and wonders why he permitted him to form a friendship with Kane. But William has other plans for his son. He knows that troublemakers attract danger, and when people face challenges, they overcome them and grow stronger. Hearing this, he believes Kane might become stronger through the experiences he will gain by being around Louis. As he says this to the butler, Louis is easily defeating Kane in hand-to-hand combat until Kane finally draws his sword and suggests that Louis come at him with his full power. Watching from a distance, William quietly appreciates his son for having a better eye for judging people than he once thought. Kane lunges forward at Louis using his martial art wind lunge technique, and at the very last moment, Louis not only defends himself, but also throws a punch so close to Kane's face that he does not even realize Louis is already counterattacking. Only when Louis's finger lightly touches Kane's face does he realize what just happened, and Kane comments that accelerating magic with magic is a good technique, but Kane's movements are a bit linear and too predictable. Kane cannot believe that even though he used magic, Louis was still able to counter him easily, and that is when he realizes why Louis was able to beat Faith. But Louis falls into deep thought, and when Kane asks what is wrong, Louis asks if he has ever felt something strange about his fighting style. Kane says he remembers nothing, because his techniques are secret arts passed down through the Aranka family. His father and grandfather both mastered them and became strong, but that is not what Louis means. He says there may be another path for Kane to take, different from his father and grandfather, and Kane can hardly believe what is coming out of his friend's mouth. Louis lowers his sword and takes a dagger from the weapon inventory behind the weapons, and turns to Kane, asking if he wants to surprise his father. At the same moment, William notices everything as both Kane and Louis suddenly leap upward and rush straight at him in the very next moment without any warning at all. Just a few minutes ago, Louis was giving Kane a small martial arts lesson, explaining that speed is everything in martial arts and the absolute best weapon. Speed does not only mean movement speed but also reaction time and quick decision-making. He thinks about how Kane fought during the second entrance exam, and says that his natural speed pairs well with his brain attribute support magic, but thrusting techniques are difficult to master, and just because his grandfather mastered them does not mean Kane has to follow the same path. Because of that, Louis hands him a pair of daggers, explaining that the reason Kane's father stopped improving like the Grandmaster was because he limited his own talent by copying the same style. But Kane does not need to make the same mistake, and to fully use his talent he needs to change his combat style. Louis asks if he is ready for that, and Kane likes the idea, saying that Louis is different from other nobles, and that he will do anything to become free, even if that means learning new techniques. The two friends start laughing and even share cigarettes while talking about their plan to attack Kane's father to show Kane's ability and determination, and that is how they both ended up lunging forward at William. Kane uses his wind magic to accelerate, and both of them rush toward William. The butler is confused about why William is not reacting, but William tells him to stay quiet. Just as Kane is about to hit his father, William calmly blocks and dodges the attack. He does the same with Louis. Louis keeps attacking again and again, thinking that daggers are the fastest and most maneuverable weapons, and he wants to use that advantage to the fullest. Combined with his skill and his butterfly step technique, he tries to exceed his opponent's reaction time and release maximum attack power in the shortest time. William is slightly surprised when he sees Louis using the butterfly step, but he quickly defends himself and dodges every attack. Meanwhile, Kane uses his wind magic to leap into the air again and attacks William from the other side. Kane feels that his body is lighter while using daggers, almost like he is a bird. He not only likes his new weapon, but he loves how the fusion of daggers, combat techniques, and wind magic gives him power and excitement. While fighting, he even says that he has finally found his own martial arts path. But William thinks it is time for the play to end, and he releases his aura, sending both Kane and Louis flying back. He is extremely angry because Kane has abandoned the Aranka family technique just to prove his own will, and he calls him naive. Kane and Louis quickly regain their balance and prepare to attack again, using wind acceleration and Louis's fast movements. However, with a single movement of his hand, Kane's father stops the dagger before it can hit him, pushing Kane back and calling his own son a coward as he rushes toward him. Kane remembers Louis's words that retreating is not weakness but a strategy. In battle, if it is necessary, he must do it. Kane decides to retreat for a moment before attacking again. After gaining his footing, he charges forward at his father once more. Just as William is about to grab him, Kane flips over his head using wind magic like a small tornado and attacks from behind. At the same moment, Louis moves in again, and they prepare to launch another attack. Kane remembers that just a few minutes earlier, Louis had taught him a strange but useful technique he learned from baseball called a change-up, where a fighter deceives the opponent by using different speeds and sudden variations. Using this technique, even simple movements can become deadly if used well. If the opponent's reaction is delayed even for a moment, they can be overwhelmed by maximizing the dagger's strength with speed. That is exactly the technique both boys are using right now, but William is ready for it once again. He blocks Kane's attack, thinking it is a low strike with no real meaning. But at the last moment, using his speed, Kane deceives him, and his weapon ends up just a few centimeters away from William. William is shocked by what his son has just done. On the other hand, Louis feels proud of his friend and prepares to attack as well. But William suddenly announces that the fun is over for today. He turns to Kane, who is sweating, and begins to leave, telling him not to disgrace the Aranka family name. Kane thinks that this is good enough, because his father did not reject the idea of him using daggers. As William leaves, the butler follows behind him. William thinks about how the boys used consecutive close-range strikes with daggers and quick retreat tactics. The possibility of such a fighting style is quite interesting. For a grandmaster like him to learn something from children is surprising, and deep down he feels proud of his son, even though he does not say it out loud. On the other hand, Louis thinks it was a great chance to spar with a grandmaster, but he is a little sad that it ended so quickly. Kane, however, is extremely happy because his father recognized him for the first time. It is the best feeling he has ever had, and he wants to give Louis a present. He takes Louis to the Aranka family library. Louis is amazed when he sees the huge number of books. When he turns around, Kane is holding a box and hands it to him, saying that if it were not for Louis, he would not have found his path so quickly. When Louis looks inside, he sees gold and several valuable items. There are also rare books about magic that commoners rarely get to read, and studying them will definitely help him. Louis picks up one of the books and reads the title. They are Academy curriculum books, divided by year. They contain basic magic theory and minor attribute studies, as well as sections for both magic and martial arts. Kane explains that all new students must undergo the Magic Awakening ritual. Louis does not know what that is, so Kane tells him that it is a ritual where people sense the elements through the sacred statue of Gaia. He himself went through the ritual at the church temple, and even members of great families have to pay 10 gold coins for it. Louis is shocked by such a high price. 10 gold coins are equal to several years of living expenses for the orphanage. He quickly asks if he will need to pay for it at the academy, but Kane tells him that the ritual there is free, which is one of the reasons so many people try to enter the academy. However, there are still other expenses such as living costs, books, and rental fees that can be quite expensive. That is why Kane gives him this gift and tells Louis to accept it without hesitation, and rely on him whenever he has money problems. Kane practically forces the box into his hands before Louis can refuse, saying they should just consider it even because of their bet. Louis understands what his friend is trying to do and finally agrees. At the same time, Louis realizes that he needs to find a way to earn money. He recently heard that magic pharmacists can earn a lot, and he wonders if there are any related books here. Suddenly he gets an idea. If he can invent things using the knowledge from his previous life, he might be able to make good money. He then asks if the Aranka family has connections with the Merchant Guild. Kane says that they do and asks why he is curious about it. Louis simply replies that it is a secret for now, but Kane will probably find out soon enough anyway. 1 week later at the academy, the entrance ceremony takes place, and every freshman walks in on tiptoe. Louis enters, happy that the day has finally arrived. As he passes by, an attractive senior girl notices his scent. He's wearing the latest trending cologne. Judging by its price, she assumes his parents must at least be a count. She decides she needs to network with him and rushes over, introducing herself as Rose from the 150th class and offering to show him around. Louis likes the idea and introduces himself. Rose has never heard the last name Grill, but the dangerous sound of it catches her attention. She thinks he might be a noble's illegitimate child as they walk together. Louis explains that for the past few years, since the Emperor's garden ruled, imperial heirs have clashed with the Academy's nobles and great families. On the surface, the Academy looks peaceful, but behind the scenes, students struggle for educational resources. Regular students can move up if they pass classes and earn credit points, but targeted students or those who fail are expelled. Rose points at Louis, warning him that people are watching, and he needs to do his best. She asks about his family support, but Louis has no answer and feels unsure, partly because she is so close. Suddenly, someone jerks her hand away and introduces himself as Brian, congratulating Louis as the commoner freshman who broke the entrance exam record. Louis greets him politely. Rose realizes she wasted her time with a commoner despite smelling the expensive cologne. Louis pays her no more attention than necessary and turns to Brian, who tells him not to mind her. He explains that the Academy is a miniature version of the Empire, with all kinds of people. Kane calls for Louis, but Brian goes off to other students, telling Louis to call if he needs anything. Louis is confused why Brian leaves just as Kane arrives. Kane explains that Brian is the Chancellor's son, and not someone he is close to. Faye interrupts, calling Brian a decent but weak-willed guy. Seeing Faye, Kane becomes defensive, and they start bickering, with Miliana, Faye's sweet friend, trying to pull Faye away to finish registration. Louis thanks Faye for backing him up during the entrance exam, but she insists he succeeded on his own, and continues teasing Kane while Miliana pulls her along. Kane turns to Louis and shows him a huge pile of coins, explaining that it is his share of the money. Louis cannot believe he earned so many gold coins, and Kane says it all came from following his instructions at Berna Village Trading Company. They had previously gone to sell perfume, which was Louis' secret. Louis explains it is a new type of perfume he created, with a subtle scent that sets it apart from the usual ones. Kane likes the smell, but worries about whether it will make money, while Louis is confident in his product. His confidence proves right, as they are making huge profits, far beyond what Kane expected. Kane mentions that he will give some of the money to his mother, and wonders what goes on inside Louis's head, curious to see what makes him tick. They walk toward the reception, with Louis asking Kane to keep this matter between them, and Kane agrees. Soon, a teacher gives Louis his credit card, reminding him not to lose it and wishing him the best. At registration, Louis hears people whispering about him, calling him shameless, and criticizing the school for allowing commoners to mingle. They talk about how he beat Faye and Shane and how the principal expelled other students because of him. Louis realizes that Sheath was expelled, and Kane explains that Sheath had hired the Assassin's Guild, and once the school discovered this, he was expelled immediately. Louis finally understands that Sheath was after him all along. Kane adds that Sheath has an older brother named Jess, whose actions are unpredictable, so Louis needs to stay close. Louis makes eye contact with Jess but feels neither worry nor anger, while Jess is excited, knowing the real fun is about to start, and planning to make Louis the worst student in the history of the academy. At the academy's grand hall, all the new students gather as the principal welcomes them, saying they should be proud of overcoming many hardships and making it into the academy. But the truth is that this is only the beginning of their lives, and they need to keep studying hard and aim to truly become powerful. One day, many of them will find their own paths and become pillars of the empire. Next, he announces that the entrance exam speech will be given by the freshman representative, Neil Gunn, and asks him to come onto the stage. Neil marches up confidently, shocking every student, who are disgusted but also intrigued because he took first place on the exam. His killing intent is insane, but he is not wearing anything at all. The examiners are horrified and want to stop him, but the principal intervenes. Neil turns to the freshmen, calling them morons and saying his goal is to beat every single one of them until they all die. The students are enraged, thinking he is arrogant, believing first place does not give him the right to treat them like that. Neil tells them to shut up, and they all remain silent, knowing they are weaklings. Seeing how problematic Neil is, the examiners worry about his future and how they will teach such a child, even considering quitting. Neil then throws his hammer from the stage at someone, declaring his real opponent is him. As the hammer lands in front of Louis, Neil jumps onto it like an insane master, saying they are going to have a legendary battle. Kane immediately steps in, protective and panicked, positioning himself between Neil and Louis, reminding Neil that the entrance exam is still ongoing and that he needs to behave and stay away from his friend. Neil taunts Kane, mocking him for being scared and comparing him to other nobles, calling them all weak and pale. Kane is furious, anger rising as he prepares to throw a punch, but Louis intervenes, stopping him and urging him to calm down. Neil then calls them both cowards and claims he does not mind taking them on, clearly provoking them. Brian arrives, trying to mediate, pointing out that he is one of the most talented commoners and urging Kane and Louis to get along for their own good, warning that selfishness will make it impossible to survive at the academy. Neil ignores him, telling him to get lost and dismissing him as unimportant. Brian feels embarrassed, Kane is amused, and Louis is confused about why Brian is putting up with Neil and defending him. Around them, students gossip, shocked that a commoner like Brian would be treated so rudely. Kane grins at the embarrassment. Neil takes the bait, threatening to smash Brian's head, but the teacher stops him, reminding him that student-on-student fighting is prohibited except during supervised classes, tests, or official tournaments, and any violation leads to immediate expulsion. Neil's demeanor shifts. He becomes slightly embarrassed, realizing no one wants to be expelled from a serious university. He backs off, deferring the fight for now, though the threat between him and Louis remains. The teacher concludes the entrance ceremony, announcing that students are free for the rest of the day and classes start tomorrow. Louis is confused about why Neil suddenly targeted him, and Kane tries to blame Faye, dragging her into the argument. Faye resists, striking Kane and pointing out that their near expulsion was partly her fault, as she fought Neil during the final exam. The match ended in a draw, though rumors claim Neil lost to Louis, fueling his desire for revenge. Faye feels relieved that Louis is safe, and that the brawl turned out well, while Louis assures her it is no problem. They are on very good terms, but then Kane drags Louis away, warning him that everyone is watching, and indeed, students are staring at them, making it clear they are already widely disliked. Later, Kane and Louis go to the academy shop, and Louis is shocked by the prices of everything because they are so expensive. The girl seller says it's not so bad, pointing out that a fluffy feather pillow is only 30 silver coins, but even that seems too expensive. She shows even pricier pillows, and Louis slaps his forehead in disbelief at how costly everything is. Kane tells him it's still on the cheaper side because he will need daily necessities, so he should splurge on himself once in a while. Louis immediately realizes the power of money and credits. He secretly uses some savings to buy the cheapest new life starter set for 100 silver coins, and the girl agrees. He is happy and relieved that he made money with the perfume beforehand, because otherwise he would have been doomed, and now he plans to send the rest of the money to the orphanage. He notices the magic potions, essential for cleaning, and thinks about finding more ways to earn. For now, he sees Faye and Miliana walking, talking about heading to the dorm, with Faye asking Miliana about her magic awakening ritual tomorrow. Louis looks at the bags in front of them and in their hands, realizing how much money they spent on his packages, and thinks about how hard his family needs to work at the dorm. He searches for room 60, hoping he is not stuck with a thug, when he notices someone blocking him by throwing a futon right in front of him. He looks into the room and sees a group of boys bullying a freshman, saying it is in his best interest to do whatever they demand. They corner the boy who looks bored and nonchalant, even when one bully grabs him. However, someone taps the bully's hand, sending shockwaves through his arm. Louis warns him that doors are forbidden and asks if he is okay with being expelled. All the bullies turn toward him, insisting they haven't done anything wrong, except that he threw the first punch. One of them lunges at Louis, but he jerks his hand away, causing the bully's arm to strike a friend hard enough to knock him to the ground. Louis smirks, insisting he didn't hit anyone, while the punched boy cries, asking why his friend hit him, but the friend has no answer. Louis kicks, making another boy's leg jerk involuntarily, hitting a crouched friend in pain. The bully is confused. Louis punches the first boy in the chest, sending him backward into another friend. The bully still doesn't understand and begins blaming Louis, but Louis smirks, saying he did nothing and the boys only hurt each other. The bully claims Louis controlled their bodies, calling him a monster, which Louis hated. He struts toward him, but the bullied boy intervenes, asking Louis to leave the issue alone. Louis then threatens all the boys before sending them away, declaring they are free to go. The bullies flee, muttering weak threats at Louis. Afterward, Louis helps the freshman pick up his belongings and notices the name Kara Candace on the bedding. He tries small talk, but Kara disappears, showing extreme shyness, clearly the type to be bullied. Louis looks around, realizing how much has happened on his first day, and hoping nothing crazy occurs at the ritual tomorrow. Meanwhile, a few men tamper with the Great Hall, acting as thorns in Louis's path. The next day at the Great Hall, all the students and freshmen gather for the ceremony. Louis arrives with his roommate Kara, who still refuses to speak to him and does not say a single word. Louis looks at the gigantic statue standing in the middle of the hall, the statue of the goddess of this world. A priest stands at the foot of the statue, calling everyone's attention and introducing them to the goddess Gaia. He then begins telling the long history. Long ago, goddess Gaia created the world where humans and monsters could coexist. But after some time, the monsters began using their overwhelming natural power against humans. Soon the dragons ruled the sky, the behemoths ruled the land, and the krakens ruled the sea. Because of the brutal power struggles between these mighty monsters, the earth was covered in blood. Many humans were annihilated during this time at the hands of these monsters. Seeing what her world had become, the goddess Gaia grew enraged. As a result, she gave her blessing to humans who lacked magical power. Because of this blessing, humanity began to understand the essence of the four elements of the world: water, earth, wind, and fire. From that understanding, they created martial arts. After many years and centuries of harsh battles, humans finally escaped annihilation and became the new rulers of the world. Now the students standing in the hall are the descendants of those great ancestors who received the blessing and awakened the true nature of the world, the power of magic. Louis listens carefully, but he notices there is still no mention of the first hero the principal talked about earlier. At the same time, Kara observes something about Louis, though he says nothing like always. Just then, the priest approaches them and points them toward their seats. The boys are confused, but they follow his direction. The priest explains that if they possess talent for magic, they will be able to sense the elements. But if they are weak and cannot sense anything, then the academy is no place for them. As he says this, the priest turns to Louis, and Louis feels a hint of tension coming from him. The priest dismisses everyone, announcing that the ritual will now begin and that all students should take their seats. Louis remains distracted by the strange look the priest gave him earlier, and wonders if he somehow offended him. The priest begins the ritual by once again announcing the four elements and instructs the students to sharpen their minds and reach out to whatever they can sense, explaining that the goddess will help them discover the element hidden within them. He performs magic, and the symbols of the four elements appear at the four corners of the hall, glowing brightly and releasing waves of energy that shine from the statues and nearly blind the students. Suddenly, a divine figure forms above them, an even larger image of the goddess Gaia. When the students look up, it feels as if they are floating in the universe, surrounded by magical and colorful orbs. The sight is breathtaking. One by one, the students are chosen by different elements. Some feel happy with their results, while others are disappointed. Suddenly, several students gasp for air when a powerful tornado forms around one of the freshmen. This means that two attributes have been awakened in a single person. When everyone looks closer, they are shocked to see that the student is the commoner Neil. They cannot believe how easily he draws the power of magic and begin wondering if he is truly a genius. Neil feels ecstatic after being chosen by two elements, fire and earth. He proudly boasts about his power and threatens the others, demanding that they obey him. After showing off his abilities, he looks back and notices that Louis is still sitting quietly in meditation. Neil thinks that someone who cannot even awaken an element should not be considered his rival, yet he secretly hopes that Louis will succeed. Everyone also looks at Louis, but to their surprise, there are no elemental energies gathered around him at all. They begin whispering because they had expected something unusual from him. Louis grows frustrated because he cannot sense anything. He wonders if it is because he is not originally from this world. It feels as if a thick black darkness surrounds him. Yet he knows that cannot be true because when he sparred with Cain before, he faintly sensed a strange power when Cain used magic. Now it feels as though his mind is being smothered, as if something cloudy is blocking his vision. Louis becomes angry and refuses to let this strange barrier break his will so easily. His determination surges, and the strength of his will releases energy that pushes the dark cloud away from him. When he opens his eyes again, he finally sees the colorful elements surrounding him. Meanwhile, the priest watching from afar cannot believe that the magic circle he placed there to sever Louis's mind from the outside has been broken. He wonders how Louis managed to do it. Louis reaches toward the water element, but it suddenly moves away from him. He can sense the elements but cannot touch them, which confuses him even more. He keeps trying to reach the water element and grows more frustrated with every attempt. This is another trap set by the priest. He secretly placed a confinement circle, a magical spell designed to block the flow between spirit and element. Along with magic forbidden ores, items that weaken the link between a person and the elements, the priest planned that even if Louis could see the elements, he would never be able to interact with them. Apparently there are people around Louis who are determined to crush him at any cost. The priest blames Louis for making so many enemies so early. Since he has already offended them, one of those enemies approaches the priest with a small gift to sabotage Louis. The priest accepts it, and now hopes Louis will fall into despair before the ritual ends. After a while, the students begin leaving the hall because their rituals are finished. They talk and gossip about Louis, saying he only acted tough earlier, but cannot even awaken a simple element and must be a weakling. At that moment, Kara notices something and points toward Louis, then toward the floor. He speaks his first words, warning that there is a trap set there. When Louis looks down, he realizes Kara is right. He punches the mat and destroys it, revealing an orb hidden underneath. Kara turns and leaves, telling him to hurry. Louis smiles at him, but feels confused about why someone would do this and whether it was just a coincidence. When he glances at the priest, he begins to think it may not be a coincidence after all. Still, he pushes the thought aside because now the real moment begins. Louis stands up and allows the elements to sense him. Suddenly, the orbs around the students rush toward Louis and form a vortex similar to the one Neil created earlier. The students cannot understand what is happening with these commoners or why they are becoming so powerful. The priest is shocked, wondering how Louis awakened this power and bypassed the curse, because even a master should not be able to break through the confinement circle and the magic forbidden orbs. Suddenly, someone places a hand on his shoulder. When he turns around, he sees the principal staring at him angrily and ordering him to stand down and leave. The priest has no choice but to obey. As the students gather and whisper about why the principal is there, some believe he came to check on the commoner who could not awaken any elements, while others suspect there is some secret connection between the principal and Louis. No one truly knows. Meanwhile, the priest is furious and wonders why the principal had to appear and ruin his plan. With no other option, he leaves the Great Hall. Outside, he finds Jess waiting. The priest informs him that their plan failed and warns that they should stay away from each other for a while. Jess agrees and says he will handle the rest himself. Although angry, Jess remains determined to crush Louis no matter what. Inside the hall, the principal quietly orders his confidant Kylie to keep an eye on the priest, because he cannot allow outsiders to cause trouble at the academy. Now that the obstacles are gone, the principal focuses his attention fully on Louis, who remains deep in meditation while awakening multiple elements. Louis appears lost in another world, and in truth he is, because inside his mind he is amazed by the countless elements surrounding him. A few days earlier at Cain's house they had discussed the nature of the elements. Cain explained that the elements are the foundations of the world created by the goddess. Louis had been confused because monsters can use magic from birth, so he asked why humans must awaken the elements first. Cain explained that monsters possess magical crystals inside their bodies. He even showed one to Louis and said that these crystals contain different elemental powers, giving monsters a natural affinity with magic from birth. Humans, however, must perform an awakening ritual. Only after being recognized by an element can they use magic, and they must manipulate the surrounding elements to cast spells. During the ritual, elements with good compatibility approach a person, and once recognized, all that remains is to train the mind and body. Louis looked at the crystal and thought about how it seemed like a condensed form of the elements themselves. Cain explained that the entire world is made of elements, but humans simply cannot see them. Louis remembered that conversation now, and formed a hypothesis that the water element floating before him might suit him best. When he touches it, he suddenly feels everything at once, from the peaceful currents of the mermaids and sirens to the terrifying forces of Karakens. The immense energy surges through his body, bringing overwhelming pain. It feels as if the essence of the world itself is manifesting through the goddess's will, and Louis feels as though he is drowning in the power of the elements. The sensation becomes too much for him. Seeing Louis struggle so violently, the principal realizes the situation is dangerous. He quickly creates a goddess barrier around the entire hall, forming a protective shield. Gaia strengthens the shield, and the four corners representing the elements form a cage-like barrier around Louis as he struggles within the storm of power. The students trapped inside cannot see anything because of the blinding light, but they feel the overwhelming energy coming from Louis. They are frightened and confused, especially because the principal has sealed the boy inside the barrier. The principal holds the shield and shouts for Louis to calm down and not be swayed by the chaos around him. Louis hears the voice and quickly gathers himself. Within moments, the raging vortex begins to calm. He wipes a tear from his face and realizes it was a close call because he almost lost control of his mind. When he studies the elements more closely, he notices something familiar. They resemble the elementary particles from the world he once lived in. If they truly behave like particles, then manipulating their frequency could produce incredible results. As this thought forms, one of the particles bursts open, and the surrounding elements begin swirling around him again. The principal has never witnessed anything like it before. A massive rainbow-colored tornado rises before him. The students tremble at the sight of such terrifying power, and even the principal realizes that the event has far exceeded his expectations. Meanwhile, Louis remains at the center of the vortex, studying the elements as if they are part of a scientific experiment. He begins to believe that humans could use magic just as easily as monsters if they learn to control these frequencies. The elements slowly flow into his bloodstream, and Louis thinks about how elementary particles are always moving. By synchronizing that movement with breathing and the flow of qi, the circulation of the elements inside the body becomes smoother. If this balance continues, he might even be able to form a magic crystal within himself and use higher-level magic techniques. Suddenly, the remaining elements rush toward his head and are absorbed into his brain. When Louis opens his eyes again, they shine with a snowflake pattern. At the same time, sharp icicles begin forming around his body. They pierce through the barrier and explode across the Great Hall. Louis rises into the air as the elemental power surges through him. The students run in panic as the spreading ice freezes everything in its path. The principal looks at the frozen students and realizes that the situation is becoming serious, but first he needs to suppress the power. He takes a golden shield from his cloak and prays to the goddess to grant the academy the power of flames. He raises the shield into the sky, causing it to shine brightly, and then invokes a barrier of flames that spreads across the entire university. The flames reach Louis, and when they touch him, the ice forming around his body slowly begins to fade. A brilliant light bursts out from the Great Hall and spreads across the academy, visible even from distant areas. People across the campus notice the sudden glow and grow confused, wondering what is happening inside the Great Hall. Louis finally lands back on the floor, while the principal looks at him and wonders what element could create something that resembles ice. Meanwhile, Louis remains deep in meditation. Inside his mind, he observes the elemental particles resting in his hand, moving at incredible speed. Slowly, they begin to fuse together. Louis performs quick calculations in his mind and realizes that depending on the combinations of the four elements, entirely new reactions can occur, creating something different. At that moment, the wind and water elements inside him begin blending together. However, he has no idea what he should do with this discovery. Right now, it feels as if he needs guidance from someone. As the confusion grows, Louis realizes that he needs to wake up. When he finally opens his eyes, he sees the principal standing over him. He glances around and notices the protective flame shield surrounding them. The principal lowers his hand and removes the barrier, then calmly asks Louis if he understands what he has just done. Louis looks around at the students who are nearly frozen and begins to realize how serious the situation has become. Louis feels embarrassed and laughs nervously. He says he made a bit of a mess and that the principal saved him. The principal then turns to his confidant Kylie and says he will take Louis back to his office while she cleans up the situation. He asks Louis to follow him and says he can ask any questions he wants along the way. They return to the principal's office. The statue of Gaia there seems to stare at Louis sternly. The principal first congratulates him for awakening all the elements while Louis drinks a potion to calm his mind because he is exhausted. Louis agrees, and then shows the elements emerging from his hands. The principal is quite impressed. Handling elements so smoothly as a new apprentice is something extraordinary, and he can hardly believe Louis has only just awakened. His talent is truly surprising. The principal then gives him a book that will help him study magic and asks him to read it carefully for reference. He explains that he mainly uses earth and wind magic, so for fire and water, Louis should ask Faye and Miliana if he has questions. Since they both come from great families, they know many secrets and techniques. The principal then calls his apprentice Kylie into the room. When she enters, the magical snake transforms into an attractive woman. The principal introduces them to each other and explains that from now on, Kylie will be responsible for protecting Louis. After that, Kylie suggests they move somewhere else where they can talk more freely. She leads both of them to an abandoned building. Louis asks why they are in this place, and the principal explains that it is where he trains and meditates. He has reinforced the area with earth magic to make it durable and soundproof. Kylie then asks Louis to show her the elements. Louis demonstrates how he awakened the ice element by chance during his ritual. He explains that by accelerating the movement of two elements and blending them, a new element is born, and he has named it the ice element. The principal notes that he has never heard of mixing elements before. Kylie is astonished. As the principal said, she is drawn to the chilling effect and smiles. In the next moment, she lunges at Louis, asking to feel the ice element herself. She throws a flurry of punches, but Louis easily defends using his magic and even lands a punch that forces her to retreat. She realizes that the fusion of two elements is extraordinary. Turning to the principal, she asks if such a fusion has ever been done before. The principal explains that it has never been done. Since magic first appeared, many people have studied its power, and countless geniuses devoted their lives to mastering it. But no one succeeded in fusing elements. Most people control only a single attribute, and very few can manipulate multiple. Even the Empire's strongest saint, Lady Miriam, a once-in-a-century genius, could control 3 elements but failed when attempting to fuse 2, which drove her mind and body to the brink of insanity. Louis realizes that normal humans cannot perform element fusion. The principal explains that humans must withstand the power of elements within body and mind. Accelerating elements, as Louis did, requires immense willpower to guide them and release them safely. Only by controlling multiple elements at once can they collide to form something new, but it can be lethal. Kylie realizes that Louis's power might rival a saint, though he himself does not yet understand it. Kylie decides to give Louis a proper test and invokes her fire element, launching into another duel with him. They clash as Principal Smith explains how Lady Miriam once theorized that handling multiple elements simultaneously required a dragon-like body capable of withstanding elemental collisions, or the use of magic crystals, like monsters do. Louis asks about the results of that research, and the principal replies that it was disastrous. Every experiment in the Empire failed, and the concept was eventually deemed forbidden and illegal. He never imagined that someone could break such a taboo, and witnessing it now surprises him deeply. Louis realizes that by calculating multiple elements along separate pathways, he avoided them colliding inside him. Kylie warns him not to get too cocky, reminding him of the risks. Louis understands the stakes. It could bring trouble, as it did in his previous life, but he has no intention of losing control. Kylie tells him that if his secret were exposed, there would be no telling what might happen. The principal assigned her to protect him, but she dislikes unnecessary trouble, so she asks Louis to be careful. Louis accepts and confirms that the ice element is an application of the water attribute he evoked. The principal asks what he means by application, and Louis explains that his stronger-than-normal willpower allows him to manipulate water into ice under pressure. As he speaks, he asks Kylie to attack again. When she lunges, Louis simultaneously demonstrates using his water magic. Under extreme pressure, water transforms into ice. He forms an ice shield in front of him. Kylie is confused, and Principal Smith is astonished by the transformation. Louis names it the water element superionic ice form. Kylie asks how he turned ordinary water into ice that resists even her flames and radiates heat. Louis explains that liquids change form under intense pressure, and he simply applied that using the knowledge in his mind. The principal turns to Louis, saying there is still so much unexplained in the world. He invites Louis to come see him anytime, and promises to personally teach him how to use his powers properly. He even offers to give credit for any new discoveries Louis makes. Louis is thrilled by the idea. Kylie, on the other hand, looks nervous, and asks if the principal is truly going to protect Louis, since what just happened has never been recorded or written in books, and could have been a coincidence. The principal explains that some magic in books is itself the result of coincidence, and he does not want to deny any possibilities. Kylie listens carefully, accepting her boss's commands. She knows our hero will be a high-maintenance student, and that she has a lot of work ahead, but she vows to do it anyway. She vanishes to attend to her other duties. The principal then offers our hero a mental recovery potion, saying it will restore energy for a while but warning him not to overuse it. Since classes begin tomorrow, he should head back and rest. Our hero drinks the potion, astonished that there are magical potions for the mind as well. Louis returns to his dormitory, still wide awake from the potion, and decides he might as well meditate until morning. When he enters, he notices Kara is still up and asks what he's doing, and if he's been waiting for him. Our hero appreciates it and thanks him personally, knowing Kara really saved him today. The principal had told him about a rare artifact in the hall and asked how our hero noticed it, but Kara doesn't answer and simply hands our hero a card for Gandus Trading Company. Louis realizes now why Kara is so knowledgeable. Kara then quietly leaves, muttering thanks before closing the door. Our hero understands that Kara was just repaying him for being saved on the first day, and being a merchant's son, it's also good networking. The next morning at Candria Arcanist Training Hall, the students gather as their new physical training instructor, Derek, is introduced. Derek is there to teach fundamentals of martial arts, but he comes off as gross and creepy. Most students, male and female, feel intimidated or disgusted. Even Kane thinks the teacher is weird, but our hero is focused on his exceptionally toned body, eager to learn how to train both body and mind. Derek immediately notices our hero and moves in behind him at incredible speed. Louis senses him instantly, while Kane is intimidated. Derek leans close, complimenting our hero on his masterclass physique and expressing a desire to train him more. Our hero feels both disgusted and cautious. Then Derek turns to Kane, mocking his lack of muscles and calling him all blonde hair with no strength. Kane is annoyed, but Derek moves on. The class begins following academy tradition, with seniors demonstrating the training equipment. A few seniors, including Jess, enter, commenting on how unreliable the freshmen are and how even great families have become disgraceful. They walk in with pride, acting as if they own the hall. Kane and our hero are slightly annoyed as Derek asks them to demonstrate their strength. One senior steps up to the weighted pec deck, which trains both arms and chest, and lifts effortlessly. Each weight is enhanced with magic, and he handles 1 ton with ease. The students are shocked, realizing they could never manage that. Another senior spins at incredible speed, while yet another runs on a treadmill with 250-kilo weights strapped to both legs. Derek then tells the freshmen to try, warning them not to overdo it. The freshmen struggle with every exercise, clearly lacking athletic skill. The seniors mock them until they stop, but then they notice someone dominating the machines. It's our hero, working out as if it's a joke. He lifts 10 tons with ease, runs on the treadmill so fast it feels like it might explode, and spins so violently it seems like a tornado. The students are stunned, convinced it's impossible, and suspect he might be using enhancement drugs. On the other hand, Neil is in his own competition. Neil, however, is in a league of his own. He presses 15 tons of weight as if it means absolutely nothing. He straps on a 20-ton weight block and runs across the treadmill as though he is taking a casual stroll through a park. The other students can only stare in horror as they watch him train like a monster in human form. Once he finishes his set, he drops the massive weight right in front of Louis with a deafening crash, making his intentions painfully obvious. In Neil's mind, this proves that he wins simply because he is stronger than everyone else. He looks straight at Louis and tells him to forget everyone around them, so the two of them can finally settle the tension between them once and for all. The problem is that Louis does not even see this as a rivalry. The only thing he sees is Neil's oversized ego and his desperate need to prove that he is the strongest student in the academy. Ironically, that thought alone irritates Louis even more. He rubs his forehead in exhaustion, already tired of how much Neil assumes about him. It is only their first day at the academy, and all they are doing right now is basic physical training. The purpose is simply to strengthen their bodies and build endurance. Nothing more than that. Louis tells Neil that showing off his strength in front of everyone is pointless and childish. Before the conversation can end, Jess suddenly takes offense to the comment, even though Louis is not even speaking to him. Jess immediately assumes the remark is directed at him, and his expression darkens with anger. He warns Louis not to become too arrogant just because he thinks he is slightly stronger than the others. According to Jess, physical strength means very little in the long run, because true power comes from attributes. That immediately catches Louis's attention, and he asks what exactly attributes are. Neil answers with complete confidence and proudly declares that he possesses dual attributes of fire and earth. The moment those words leave his mouth, Jess looks genuinely stunned. A commoner awakening with both fire and earth attributes is almost unheard of, and even he realizes how extraordinary that combination is. Neil then turns the question toward Louis and asks him what attribute he possesses. Louis calmly replies that he has a water attribute. The second Jess hears that answer, he bursts into laughter. Out of all possible attributes, Louis ends up with water. To Jess, it sounds completely pathetic. He mocks Louis openly and asks what someone with a water attribute is even supposed to do in a fight. Is he going to splash puddles at his enemies and hope they slip? Louis only looks at him in confusion, unable to understand why water is considered so laughable. That is when Miliana finally explains the situation to him. She tells Louis that water attribute martial arcane is considered extremely basic compared to the other elemental paths. Its most common offensive skill is Aqua Blade, a technique that leans far more toward defense and support than outright destruction. Because of that, people tend to look down on water users and see them as weaker than fighters who possess far more aggressive and destructive attributes. Louis falls silent for a moment as he processes everything he has just heard. Until now, he never realizes that the water attribute is looked down upon to such an extent. Jess keeps pushing the humiliation further and tells him that no matter how strong his body may be, the moment someone awakens a water attribute, their future becomes completely hopeless. The group of bullies surrounding him burst into laughter at those words. One of them smugly adds that throughout all of history, not a single water attribute user has ever risen to the rank of Grandmaster. Because of that, they mockingly advise Louis to accept his place and become nothing more than support for people who possess superior attributes. According to them, the best thing he can do is stand behind stronger fighters and help them win battles. Louis immediately dislikes the tone they are using. He narrows his eyes and asks if they are seriously saying that someone who only possesses a water attribute can never rise beyond the level of master, even under ideal circumstances. Jess responds as if the answer is obvious and tells him that it is simply common sense. He sneers at Louis and says that a commoner clearly knows nothing about the world, which which is why someone has to explain reality to him in the first place. At that point, Kane finally loses his patience and snaps back at them. Faye also steps in and demands that the bullies stop talking because they clearly have no idea what they are doing. The tension between both groups rises immediately, and the argument grows louder with every passing second. Jess suddenly walks toward the teacher and reminds him that the senior students are supposed to act as role models for the newcomers. Then he proposes a new exercise. He explains that controlling magic properly requires not only mana control, but also a powerful body capable of enduring punishment. According to him, endurance training is the perfect way to strengthen both physical toughness and mana control, because taking direct hits forces the body to adapt under pressure. With a smug grin on his face, Jess suggests a friendly sparring match that can also function as endurance training. He proudly declares that he will personally demonstrate to the new students just how useless the water attribute truly is. At that moment, Kane quickly leans toward Louis and warns him about something important. He reveals that Jess is actually the older brother of the student Louis humiliates earlier. He also explains that water attributes are notoriously weak when it comes to reinforcing and protecting the body. In other words, Jess is clearly planning to beat Louis half to death in front of everyone. Even after hearing the warning, Louis barely pays attention to Kane's concern. Instead, he turns toward the teacher and calmly states that he believes there is no such thing as a superior or inferior attribute. The teacher immediately interprets those words as Louis accepting the challenge, and Louis confirms it without hesitation. He declares that he will fight the seniors himself and prove that their beliefs are wrong. Meanwhile, the senior students eagerly wait for the fight to begin. Kane tries one last time to convince Louis to reconsider, but Louis simply tells him that everything will be fine. The teacher then announces the rules for the match. He states that magic can only be used inside the central arena, and says that he expects everyone to rely on the strength of the bodies they have worked so hard to build. He also makes it clear that dodging attacks during the exchange is strictly forbidden. Every participant must stand their ground and endure the blows they receive. As Jess and Louis prepare themselves, a sudden explosion of flames erupts nearby. Neil bursts forward surrounded by fire while laughing like a complete maniac. He shouts that his moment has finally arrived and declares that now he can finally enjoy a proper fight. The senior students immediately grow irritated by his interruption. One of them steps forward with an angry expression and announces that he will personally teach Neil how to speak to his seniors with respect. The senior activates his earth attribute and forms thick armor around his body before charging forward at terrifying speed. His attack looks vicious enough to kill someone outright. However, before he can even reach his target, a fist slams directly into his face with monstrous force. The impact completely shatters his defense and sends him flying across the arena. Everyone stares in shock as Neil casually steps forward after delivering the blow. Jess and the other seniors stand frozen in disbelief. The student who gets punched can hardly understand what just happened. His earth armor is famous for being one of the toughest defensive abilities available, yet Neil destroys it with a single strike. Furious and humiliated, Jess immediately orders the rest of the seniors to attack Neil together and bring him down by force. The senior students rush toward Neil all at once, but Neil looks thrilled instead of worried. He tears off his shirt dramatically and reveals his perfectly sculpted body as if he is showing off before a crowd. Then he grins wildly and charges straight into battle. The attacks thrown at him barely seem to affect him at all. While the blows feel harmless to Neil, every strike he delivers back is devastating. He grabs one senior and hurls him away with enough force to crash into several others behind him. For a brief moment, Neil's back is left completely exposed. One of the Earth Attribute seniors sees the opening and rushes forward, convinced that he has finally found Neil's weak spot. He attacks with everything he has, but the instant his strike lands, his confidence disappears. Instead of injuring Neil, he ends up shattering his own armor. A split second later, once the adrenaline fades, unbearable pain surges through his body and he lets out a shriek that echoes through the arena. The horrified senior finally realizes what happened. Neil concentrates his mana into a single point on his body to strengthen it to an absurd degree. The senior cannot comprehend how a first-year student possesses such terrifying control over mana already. Before he can recover, Neil kicks him violently across the arena and sends him crashing into a wall. The teacher watches the entire scene with complete boredom on his face. In a calm voice, he reminds everyone that even if they become powerful fighters, they should never neglect the fundamentals unless they want to end up exactly like the defeated senior lying on the ground. Louis watches the carnage with growing fear. Even he has to admit that Neil is delivering a horrifying beating. He quietly asks Kane if he thinks Neil has gone too far. Before Kane can answer, another attack suddenly comes from behind them. Kane notices the danger instantly, just as Faye and Louis spot another senior approaching from the front. Without hesitation, both Kane and Faye step forward to protect Louis. At the same time, they also want to prove to the seniors that the freshmen are not weak prey, waiting to be crushed. As Louis stands between his two friends, he slowly lifts his eyes toward Jess. Their gazes lock onto each other across the arena. Louis then speaks calmly and tells him that it is finally time for their main event. Jess mocks Lewis and tells him that he thinks far too highly of himself if he truly believes he is the main event. He calls him arrogant, ignorant, and completely unaware of his place. Jess proudly declares that he is the heir of the Harry family, a noble house with prestige and influence. Under the banner of his family name, he claims that he will personally teach a lowborn nobody like Lewis what true noble dignity and pride look like. To Jess, honor and manners are things that only nobles can truly possess. The moment he finishes speaking, Jess launches himself high into the air and dives toward Louis with incredible speed. He unleashes gale penetration and aims directly for Louis with deadly force. However, just as the attack is about to connect, Lewis instantly creates an ice shield above himself. Jess is completely stunned by what happens next. Not only is the shield strong enough to block his attack without cracking, but the freezing energy pouring from it is so intense that it forces him to retreat immediately. Jess stares at his own hands in disbelief and realizes that they are freezing simply from making contact with the ice. He cannot believe that this strange and terrifying power comes from water magic. Louis calmly confirms that it is simply an application of water magic techniques. Nearby, Meliana watches the exchange with deep curiosity, because even she has never seen water magic used in this way before. The other students are equally confused. None of them have ever seen an ice shield before, nor have they witnessed water magic being manipulated like this. Jess refuses to accept what he is seeing, and convinces himself that Lewis is merely using some strange trick with water techniques. Brian mutters that the freshmen this year are nothing but troublemakers. Jess decides that no matter what strange abilities Louis possesses, he is still going to teach him a lesson. At the same time, Jess looks toward Neil, who is still destroying the senior students one after another, and immediately rushes toward him. Neil notices Jess approaching and becomes excited because he assumes Jess is about to become his next punching bag. Neil throws a powerful punch at him, but Jess smoothly avoids the attack and laughs while telling him that he missed. Neil grins at the challenge in front of him. Over the next few moments, Jess moves so quickly that Neil cannot land a single hit on him. However, Jess is not truly focused on defeating Neil. Throughout the chaos, he is secretly using Neil as a distraction so he can get closer to Lewis. The instant he sees an opening, Jess rushes toward Lewis with clear killing intent. Before he can reach him, Neil suddenly charges in from the front and attacks Jess directly. Jess avoids the strike once again, and instantly appears behind Louis before attempting another sneak attack. However, Lewis raises another ice shield and blocks him completely. Louis mocks Jess and tells him that all he ever talks about is honor and pride, yet all he does is rely on sneak attacks from behind. According to Louis, noble ideals are worthless in front of him. Jess immediately fires back and says that as a noble, he simply makes the decisions necessary to secure victory. To him, winning is his destiny. Even while they continue fighting, both Jess and Lewis exchange sharp and playful banter during the battle. Neil grows increasingly irritated as he watches them. He suddenly jumps into the middle of their fight and attacks again. Lewis narrowly dodges the blow and looks confused because Neil is supposed to be fighting on his side. On top of that, being forced into a 2-against-1 battle is beginning to irritate him. Jess suddenly believes he finally has an advantage now that Lewis is distracted. He lunges toward him for another attack, but at the last possible second, Neil catches up to him and violently shoves him away. Jess becomes furious at Neil's reckless and maniacal behavior as he is sent flying backward. Neil shouts at him and says that he needs to stop underestimating him, and realize that teaming up is the smartest strategy. Now that Jess is out of the way, Neil turns toward Louis with excitement burning in his eyes. He tells him that now that the annoying noble is gone, it is finally time for the two of them to fight face to face. The teacher watches both of them carefully and realizes that they are using combat styles focused on speed, precision, and close-range movement. In his eyes, both of them are genuine battle geniuses. At this rate, they might even surpass William himself. Lewis continues dodging Neil's relentless attacks until he suddenly grabs Neil's arm and punches directly toward his throat, which happens to be Neil's weak point. Neil immediately struggles to breathe and becomes momentarily breathless from the strike. Faye instantly becomes angry at Lewis and shouts at him because attacking someone's throat is extremely dangerous. While Lewis's attention shifts away from Neil for only a brief second, Neil suddenly grabs his hand. Anger flashes through Neil's eyes as he realizes that he has finally caught him. He tells Louis that now he is going to make him feel real pain. Neil slams his head forward and headbutts Louis while muttering that someone like Louis should never have been able to fight him on equal footing. According to Neil, he is only getting started. Louis stares at him coldly and reminds him that the academy rules clearly state that students must not intentionally try to seriously injure each other. In Lewis's eyes, Neil has already crossed that line. At that moment, Lewis releases the water element inside his body. Instantly, streams of water begin flooding around him as his awakened water element surges outward. Neil watches the sight with growing interest, but he remains completely confident. In his mind, simple water magic is nowhere near enough to stop him. The teacher himself says that this training is meant to test the strength of their bodies, so Neil refuses to back down or avoid the attack. Lewis remains completely unfazed by Neil's confidence. He calmly asks him if he would prefer something stronger instead. The instant those words leave his mouth, the water around them transforms into ice and freezes around Neil's body. Neil immediately realizes that the pain tearing through him is unbearable. He quickly releases his fire element and desperately melts the ice trapping him. When he finally breaks free, he looks even more insane than before. A wild grin spreads across his face as he declares that fighting Louis is making him stronger. Because of that, he insists that their battle must continue. One night, when Neil is still just a child, he kneels beside a river and drinks water while trying to understand the strange pain constantly burning through his body. As he sits there alone in the darkness, he suddenly notices a pack of wolves slowly approaching him. Fear immediately grips him. Before he can react properly, the wolves lunge at him and begin tearing into his body. Neil desperately tries to defend himself, but one of the wolves sinks its teeth into his arm while another bites deeply into his leg. Even as a child, however, Neil possesses frightening strength. Through sheer force, he pries open one wolf's jaws and rips his trapped arm free. Rage explodes inside him. The pain flooding through his body drives him into a frenzy, and in that moment, he tears the wolves apart with his bare hands. That night changes him forever. As the bloodied bodies of the wolves lie scattered around him, Neil comes to a realization. Pain proves that a person is truly alive. Strength is what allows people to survive. The more pain he endures, the stronger he becomes. Only the strong survive in this world, and that small child manages to slaughter every murderous wolf that attacks him. That is why Neil constantly seeks pain. To him, pain is what defines his existence and shapes who he is. Back in the present, Neil casually rushes toward Louis again. As he charges forward, he tells Louis that the two of them are the same. In his eyes, they are both monsters chasing after greater power. Louis immediately responds by using his martial arts technique. Focusing both his mind and strength into a single movement, he drives a powerful kick directly into Neil's face. The strike lands perfectly, but instead of being shaken by it, Neil actually enjoys the pain. That reaction only frustrates Louis further. He attacks again and again without stopping, landing blow after blow against Neil while Neil continues grinning through the punishment and appreciating every hit he receives. Faye and Kane watch the fight in complete confusion. At this rate, Louis might actually kill Neil. What terrifies them even more is that Neil seems to grow wilder and more dangerous with every second that passes. Realizing how out of control the situation is becoming, both of them decide that they need to stop Louis before things become even worse. Neil refuses to back down and shouts that the fight is not over yet. He lunges toward Louis again, but Louis quickly dodges the attack. At the same time, Louis struggles internally as he tries to figure out how to stop this complete maniac without violating the Academy rules. He wonders if freezing Neil in place might finally be enough to restrain him. Louis tells Neil to calm down before driving a punch into his stomach. Immediately after that, he uses Ice Tempest and freezes Neil against the wall. However, Neil once again releases his fire attribute and melts through the ice, trapping him. Watching all of this unfold, the teacher finally begins to look genuinely interested. In his eyes, the fight is only now becoming entertaining. Neil drops to the ground but still refuses to surrender. He declares that this is nowhere near enough to satisfy him, and urges Louis to come at him again with everything he has. Then something unexpected suddenly happens. Instead of Neil charging toward Louis once more, a powerful force slams him directly into the ground. Neil barely manages to realize what happens before he sees Kylie standing there. Kylie coldly tells the now unconscious Neil that he has gone far too far. In her eyes, he is nothing more than a muscle-headed idiot who completely loses control of himself. The teacher instantly reacts the moment he sees Kylie. It is painfully obvious that he has a crush on her because he practically lights up with excitement after realizing that he has not seen her in a long time. In his mind, she looks even more beautiful than before, and the overwhelming aura radiating from her body completely captivates him. However, Kylie immediately shuts down his excitement and forces him to face reality. She asks him what he plans to do if a student dies on the very first day of class. She reminds him that he should remember the warning the principal gives him earlier. The teacher becomes embarrassed and quickly defends himself. He insists that he is not some irresponsible privileged fool and claims that he is only trying to bring out the student's potential through combat. Kylie mocks him and says that he should sincerely hope he is merely an idiot because she is specifically ordered to protect Louis, and he should understand exactly what that implies. She then informs the teacher that the principal wants to see him in his office after class ends. The teacher immediately realizes that another lecture is waiting for him. Even so, when he looks back at the freshmen, he cannot help thinking about how much potential they possess. In particular, Louis, Faye, and Kane stand out to him far more than the others. He tells Neil to put his clothes back on and warns him that he is willing to overlook his crazed behavior this one time. However, if Neil loses control again in the future, he will have his academy credits reduced. Neil barely listens to the warning because his mind is focused elsewhere entirely. He realizes that he manages to withstand attacks from someone at the level of a master. At the same time, he also realizes that if he keeps destroying his clothes every time he fights, he is eventually going to go broke from replacing them. Because of that, he decides that he has no choice but to start hunting monsters for money. Soon after, the class bell rings, and the teacher dismisses everyone. He announces that the senior students are free to leave while the freshmen should rest, recover, and drink potions together. He also warns the freshmen that from now on he plans to push them even harder, so they should prepare themselves and not start crying later. After class, Kane tells Louis that in the entire 100-year history of the academy, there are almost no cases where freshmen manage to defeat senior students. Louis thinks carefully about that statement because he does not remember reading anything about such events in the academy documents. Kane then explains that it only happens 3 times in history, and during each of those years, several grandmasters eventually emerge from those freshman classes. Louis immediately asks when the most recent case occurs. Kane explains that the latest example happens during the years when their fathers attend the academy. Apparently, even they manage to defeat upperclassmen during their first year. Meanwhile, the senior students who are bruised, bloodied, and humiliated slowly make their way back to their classroom. One of the seniors apologizes to Jess for being too weak, but he also admits that Louis and Neil are simply far too strong. He quietly suggests that maybe they should deal with those two from the shadows instead. Jess immediately rejects that idea. He wants to defeat them openly and stand above everyone else as the strongest because he believes that position rightfully belongs to him. He tells his companion not to rush because there will be plenty of chances to take revenge later. In Jess's eyes, no matter how talented or powerful Louis and Neil become, they are still merely citizens of the Empire. Nobles are the ones who truly control the fate of the Empire. Later, Faye speaks with Miliana and asks what she thinks about Louis' techniques. She points out that his talent with water magic is unbelievable. Faye also suggests that if Miliana stays close to Louis and trains alongside him, she might grow stronger as well. Miliana quietly thinks about Louis and the overwhelming power behind his water magic. Deep down, she feels that she could never replicate what he does. Even if she trains beside him, her own water attribute techniques feel completely inadequate. Before Louis appears, no one ever manages to use water magic in such strange and powerful ways. Because of that, Miliana realizes that she desperately needs to create more water attribute attack techniques that are easier for her to use. Faye asks her if she is really pushing herself this hard at only 16 years old. Miliana quietly replies that she has to do it for the sake of her family because she wants to make them proud. Faye already knows that this is exactly the answer Miliana is going to give. After hearing it, she calls Louis over and tells him that Miliana wants to speak with him. The moment she says that, everyone nearby immediately turns toward Miliana. Under all their stares, she begins to grow nervous. Most of the students instantly assume that Miliana is about to confess her feelings to Louis in front of everyone, but that is not what she intends at all. Louis walks over to the girls, and Faye explains that since he uses water magic earlier, she wants to know if he can teach some of those techniques to Miliana. Louis immediately agrees without hesitation. Being naturally kind-hearted, he says that he does not mind at all. In fact, because they are friends, he would be happy to help her. The moment Miliana hears the word friends, she becomes strangely confused. Even Louis notices her reaction and looks puzzled by it. That is when Miliana quietly confesses that one day she might bring trouble into his life. And even then, she hopes he will not regret becoming friends with her. Louis tells Miliana that he will never regret being friends with her because he could never regret the people he cares about. Hearing that only makes Miliana more emotional. She quickly says that she does not want to drag him into the problems surrounding her life before suddenly running away. Everyone watches her leave with confused expressions. Faye immediately runs after her and apologizes to Louis along the way, saying that she is going to talk to Miliana for a while and make sure that she is all right. As they disappear, Louis quietly thinks about how everyone around him carries different burdens and struggles. He understands that much already. If anything, he begins to feel that he might end up becoming the one who causes trouble for Miliana instead. He turns toward Kane and asks whether he knows anything about her background. Kane explains that Miliana is the daughter of the Royce family and also the granddaughter of a grandmaster. Back when her grandmother is still alive, the Royce family thrives and holds considerable influence. However, after her grandmother passes away, the family gradually loses its power and status. Beyond that, Kane admits that he does not know much about what happens afterward. He says that Faye probably knows far more about the situation than he does. Louis then turns toward Kara and asks if she knows anything else. Kara explains that the Royce family eventually clashes with the Arcanist Association. Hearing that immediately catches Louis's attention. He asks if the trouble Miliana mentions is connected to the Arcanist Association and whether Kara knows any additional details. Unfortunately, Kara shakes her head and admits that this is all she knows. For now, Louis realizes that if he wants real answers, he will eventually need to ask either Faye or Miliana directly. The next day, the freshmen gather at the Academy's first magic training ground. Standing before them, the professor announces that magic is the goddess's blessing and the true essence of the world itself. He explains that during this class, he will teach them how to control magic properly and how to use martial arcane techniques in combat. He then introduces himself as Mr. Sid. Kane notices that Louis suddenly seems irritated and asks him what is wrong. After all, Louis is incredibly excited for magic class earlier. Louis quietly admits that he is still excited to learn, but for some reason he already feels as though the professor dislikes him. Almost immediately after those words leave his mouth, Mr. Sid appears directly in front of Lewis. He coldly tells him that students should not chat while the teacher is speaking. He openly states that he hates rude and idiotic people in his classroom. Without hesitation, he announces that 1 credit will be deducted from Louis's account. Mr. Sid continues insulting him and says that unlike certain muscle-brained idiots, students are expected to follow the academy rules properly. According to him, if Lewis keeps breaking regulations, he will eventually end up with 0 credits remaining. A moment later, Mr. Sid deducts another credit while accusing Louis of being vulgar and disrespectful, even though Louis never actually says anything offensive. Despite the unfair treatment, Louis remains silent because he already understands that the professor is deliberately targeting him. As Mr. Sid walks away, he tells Louis that he should learn proper noble etiquette and culture if he truly wants to behave like a respectable student. Then Mr. Sid raises his finger, and suddenly a gigantic sand knight erupts from the ground through the use of magic art. Both Kane and Louis stare at the enormous construct in amazement. Mr. Sid explains that in real combat, martial arcane requires mastery over both martial arts and magic. If someone wishes to become a true apprentice, they must first learn how to manifest mana into the shape of a weapon. Once they master that skill, they can eventually cover their entire body with arcane armor. As he speaks, Mr. Sid demonstrates the technique by forming a sword from mana in his right hand. He explains that after mastering those fundamentals, a person can finally become a true fighter. In order to control mana through the body, one must connect their thoughts to their movements and guide mana through precise physical actions. To demonstrate further, Mr. Sid flips the sword in his hand before slashing toward the giant sand knight. The attack slices the construct completely in half and leaves the students stunned by the destructive power of martial arcane. Afterward, he tells the students that later they will all attempt to attack stone statues in the same way. The student who causes the greatest amount of damage will receive 5 extra credits. Before that begins, however, he plans to teach them how to attack properly with magic. Mr. Sid orders everyone to divide themselves into groups based on their attributes. Since Neil possesses dual attributes, he does not need to join a group. Meanwhile, the students with water attributes are instructed to move aside, practice arcane armor, and assist with warm-up exercises instead. The different groups begin separating from one another. Kane, Miliana, Faye, and Lewis all head toward their specific attribute section. Almost immediately, several students from the other groups begin mocking Miliana. They laugh at her and sarcastically refer to water users as famous human punching bags. Miliana feels deeply embarrassed because once again she is forced into a support role in the corner, while the other students receive opportunities to attack the statues directly. The frustration inside her continues growing stronger. At this rate, she feels there is no possible way she will ever become a grandmaster. In the middle of her stress and frustration, she mutters that she wants to prove her strength to that person. Hearing that makes Lewis wonder who exactly she is talking about. He suspects it may have something to do with the Arcanist Association. Louis directly asks her what is troubling her so much, but Miliana quickly becomes embarrassed and insists that it is nothing important and has nothing to do with him. As Louis continues preparing himself, he quietly wonders why Miliana is so obsessed with offensive abilities. From his perspective, water attributes naturally possess stronger support magic than most other elements. Supporting allies and disrupting enemies are both extremely important during battle. Miliana hears his thoughts and firmly explains that she wants to become a grandmaster and restore her family's lost reputation. In order to achieve that dream, she believes she must become capable of both attacking and defending effectively. She insists that the goddess would never create an incomplete attribute, which means powerful offensive water techniques must exist somewhere. Because of that belief, she spends years trying to improve Aqua Blade through the use of magic potions, while also developing multi-hit variations of the technique. Despite all her efforts, however, she still cannot overcome water magic's lack of raw destructive power. Deep down, she begins to fear that perhaps water users truly can never reach the level of Grandmaster. At that moment, another boy from their class approaches Miliana and tells her that his turn is coming soon, so he needs to warm up using aqua support techniques. Miliana creates a water shield around him so he can practice properly, but the constant attacks begin exhausting her. The repeated strain clearly starts taking a toll on her body. Watching this scene causes Louis to think deeply about water attributes and the idea of becoming a Grandmaster. The situation reminds him painfully of his previous life. Back then, people constantly mock him because of his disability. They laugh at him for researching martial arts, even though he cannot properly walk and constantly struggles with terrible asthma. Many people bully him and call him pathetic for trying to pursue impossible dreams. Some even steal his research while telling him to stop glorifying failure. Others cruelly tell him to abandon his work and simply die. Looking at Miliana now, Louis realizes that she fully understands her own weaknesses, yet she still refuses to abandon her dream. Just like Kane, she continues moving forward no matter what others say about her. Because of that, Louis begins thinking that maybe he can show her a completely different path for martial arts and water magic. He suddenly steps forward and creates a powerful ice shield with his own magic. The force of the technique instantly sends the irritating boy flying backward. Louis then turns toward Miliana and tells her that he also believes in the potential of water magic. Because of that belief, he asks whether she would watch his technique carefully. Miliana blushes slightly from how close Louis suddenly stands beside her and nervously asks if he is truly serious about this. Louis calls out to Mr. Sid and asks if he can also attempt to attack one of the statues. Already irritated by Louis's existence, Mr. Sid warns him that if he fails to damage the statue, even more credits will be deducted from his account. He sarcastically asks whether Louis truly plans to waste his precious ice magic on something that is sturdy and tells him that he should focus on basic mana control instead. Louis calmly replies that he actually discovers a better method for increasing the offensive power of water attributes. The moment everyone hears that claim, laughter immediately spreads through the training ground. The idea sounds absurd to them. Even Miliana nervously points out that the statues are special artifacts created from rare magical materials and reinforced heavily with earth magic. According to her, ordinary water spells cannot even scratch them. She worries that Louis might lose even more credits if he fails. Louis simply reassures her and says that everything is fine because he already has a plan. He calmly walks toward the giant knight statue and scoops sand into his hand. As he stares at it, he remembers an old saying from his previous world that soft things can eventually overcome hard things. If he combines high-pressure water with sand and fires it at extreme speed, the result can become powerful enough to cut through almost anything. With that thought in mind, Louis immediately puts the idea into action. Moments later, the massive knight statue is sliced apart into countless pieces. Mr. Sid stares at the destroyed remains of his precious statue in complete disbelief. Meanwhile, Louis calmly looks toward him and declares that this is the true nature of water magic. During the night, Kane, Kara, and Louis walk back toward their dorms together, while Kane excitedly talks about what happens earlier in class. He tells Louis that he really wishes he could have seen the expression on Mr. Sid's face the moment Louis earns all those credits. According to Kane, it is an absolute masterpiece. Mr. Sid looks completely miserable, almost like he is suffering through a nightmare. The instant he witnesses Louis using a clean and powerful water attribute attack, his face turns pale as if he has just eaten rotten bread. After that, he practically bolts out of the room the second class ends. Louis casually replies that at the time he is so focused on experimenting with water magic that he never even bothers paying attention to the teacher's reaction because, to him, the man's expression is simply not worth looking at. Kane quickly changes the subject back to water magic and mentions that they should seriously consider Faye's suggestion. He explains that Miliana is already working extremely hard to create a new path for herself. She is even spending money on expensive mental recovery potions to keep training. He also hears that she plans to rent private training rooms during her free time so she can continue practicing alone. Kane points out that joining forces with her might actually benefit Louis as well. Kara suddenly joins the conversation and explains that renting a training room costs around 30 silver coins, while mental recovery potions can cost nearly 300 gold coins. Hearing those numbers completely shocks Louis. The prices are far higher than he expects. After thinking for a moment, he turns toward Kara and asks him for a favor related to the upcoming training mission they are supposed to participate in within the next few days. The three of them continue discussing what might happen during the mission while making their way back to the dormitories. The following day, the teacher gathers the entire class together outside on the academy grounds. He gives them a speech about how their bodies are already becoming stronger and more refined with every passing day. Watching their progress apparently fills him with pride and satisfaction. Because of that, he announces that they are finally ready to begin participating in the Academy's official training missions. According to him, these missions are not only part of their responsibilities as students, but also important opportunities for growth. He explains that Candria Arcanist Academy is connected to the Mondo Great Forest along the western frontier. Long ago, that forest serves as the territory of terrifying monsters, but over time it becomes a natural border separating several major nations. Even now, countless monsters still inhabit the forest. The deeper someone travels toward the center, the more dangerous and powerful the monsters become. By comparison, the creatures living near the outer edge are far weaker. The academy itself is originally built partly to help defend the Empire against threats emerging from the forest. That is why students are regularly sent on training missions to exterminate weaker monsters around the outskirts. The teacher explains that every magic crystal collected from defeated monsters can later be exchanged for credits or rewards after returning to the academy. On top of that, whichever student brings back the largest haul of crystals will receive an additional bonus reward. However, he also warns them that recklessness has consequences. If students challenge monsters that are too powerful and require rescue from a teacher, they will immediately lose 1 credit as punishment. After finishing his explanation, the teacher dismisses them to prepare for departure. Neil looks incredibly excited after hearing all of this because, in his mind, this is finally a chance for him to completely cut loose in real combat. Meanwhile, Faye asks Louis whether he truly plans to use actual combat situations to help train Miliana. Louis calmly answers that real battles reveal a person's true abilities far better than controlled practice ever can. Because of that, all of them agree to form a team of 5 people. They believe that combining both their strength and teamwork will make them far more effective than wasting huge amounts of money on expensive training rooms. Faye then turns toward Miliana and asks what she thinks about the idea. To everyone's surprise, Miliana genuinely seems excited about joining them. Right after that, the teacher claps his hands and announces that every group of 5 freshmen will complete their first training mission alongside several senior students. He explains that this arrangement gives the freshmen an opportunity to learn from the experience of older students while staying relatively safe during their first mission. Not long after that announcement, Louis notices Jess staring at him from nearby. Jess approaches him and coldly comments on how they somehow end up meeting once again during training mission preparations. He reminds Louis that training missions are extremely dangerous and sarcastically tells him to make sure he does not get himself killed out there. Louis calmly responds that people only truly grow stronger after overcoming dangerous situations. Jess clicks his tongue in annoyance before walking away and muttering that Louis is an arrogant bastard. Once he leaves, Jess quietly tells one of his friends that if a fight breaks out during the mission, none of the seniors should help the freshmen at all. At the same time, Kane quietly warns Louis that teachers usually observe the missions from afar. They rarely interfere directly unless absolutely necessary. However, he suspects that some seniors might intentionally lure the freshmen deeper into the forest and force them towards stronger monsters just to make things harder for them. Louis simply replies that stronger monsters mean more valuable magic crystals, which also means more money and more academy credits. Soon afterward, all the student groups begin entering the forest together. As they travel deeper inside, Louis talks with Kane about the details of the forest itself and wonders whether any powerful survivors from ancient times might still remain hidden there. Kane explains that the saints of the region wiped out most of the dangerous behemoths long ago, so there are supposedly none left near the outer regions anymore. At best, they might encounter a few fighter-class monsters if they are lucky. Nearby, the senior assigned to supervise their group overhears the conversation and secretly scoffs at them. In his mind, fighter-class monsters normally require multiple trained fighters working together just to survive. The idea that a handful of apprentices think they can defeat such creatures sounds incredibly naive to him. Suddenly, a massive monster appears directly in front of the group. Even the supervising senior looks stunned because the creature standing before them is a fighter-class grand bear. Instead of helping immediately, the senior quickly jumps into a nearby tree and hides himself among the branches. He quietly thinks that this timing is perfect because a monster at this level should be more than enough to overwhelm inexperienced freshmen. From his safe hiding place, he decides that he will simply watch the entire disaster unfold comfortably from above. Louis immediately grows irritated the moment he notices the situation. Meanwhile, the senior silently thinks about how dangerous the grand bear truly is. The creature possesses overwhelming stamina along with incredibly tough defenses. In his mind, these students are about to experience a brutal fight they are completely unprepared for. Despite that, Louis immediately orders everyone in his group to take combat positions. The moment the bear releases a deafening roar, all 5 members prepare their weapons and attack together. Faye strikes first with her spear while Kane attacks from behind using his newly developed martial arts technique. However, the moment his attack lands, Kane realizes that the monster's body feels as hard as solid stone. When the bear retaliates, Kane barely manages to defend himself from the counterattack. Right after that, Faye charges in again while Kara attacks from another angle. Watching all of them fight together fills Louis with satisfaction because he is happy to see everyone actively working together in real combat. However, the constant attacks soon attract the Grand Bear's attention toward Louis and Miliana. In response, Miliana quickly uses her water magic to restrain the bear's movements. Then, combining her control over water with a martial arts movement, she throws the massive creature through the air almost like a bowling ball. Louis stares in surprise because he has never seen that technique before. Faye immediately explains that the move is actually Miliana's original creation, a technique that combines water magic with jujitsu principles. Hearing that genuinely impresses Louis because he is glad to see her creating unique techniques of her own. Not wanting to fall behind Miliana, Louis rushes toward the bear himself because he also wants to demonstrate his own strength. He delivers a brutal kick directly into the creature's chest near its heart and sends the giant beast flying backward. Immediately afterward, he forms a compressed sphere of water and launches it toward the bear. The attack explodes violently upon impact before the monster crashes onto the ground. Miliana stares in shock after witnessing the damage Louis inflicts. Even students with stronger elemental attributes barely manage to scratch the grand bear, yet Louis severely injures it using water magic alone. Louis calmly explains that everything comes down to scientific principles. When water becomes superheated, compressed, and detonated under pressure, it creates steam powerful enough to burn targets internally and disrupt their breathing. Even if an enemy possesses tough skin or strong defenses, internal damage is far harder to resist. Miliana absorbs every word he says as though she is receiving an important life lesson. Deep inside, she begins wondering whether she can apply those ideas to her own techniques as well. Afterward, Louis suddenly hands her a special magic ring created by the Candace Trading Company, something he earlier requests through Kara's help. With the ring, Miliana can temporarily use earth, fire, and wind magic alongside her natural water attribute, just like Louis does himself. Louis actually gets the idea after noticing how many different rings Mr. Sid wears during class. Seeing that inspires him to experiment with combining multiple attributes in the same way. Because of that inspiration, he specifically arranges for one of the rings to be made for Miliana as well. Miliana feels genuinely happy after receiving such a thoughtful gift. However, the moment she puts the ring on, a sudden fire attack hurtles directly toward her. Louis immediately shouts a warning for her safety. Thankfully, Miliana notices the incoming attack at the very last possible second and barely manages to avoid being killed by it. Even after surviving, she stares back in shock while thinking about the terrifying amount of power behind that attack. Everyone immediately turns toward the direction where it comes from. Hidden among the trees, the senior watching them cannot believe what he is seeing. A fighter-class Grand Bear completely vanishes under that overwhelming force as if its body never even exists in the first place. At the same time, Louis and the rest of his group suddenly sense something massive approaching them through the forest. The giant trees surrounding them begin shaking violently from the sheer weight and presence of the creatures moving through them. Moments later, enormous monsters emerge from the shadows. They are Blaze Kongs, monstrous ape-like creatures filled with fire and pure madness embedded deep into their nature. Kane immediately comments that the situation is extremely bad. Louis quickly asks him what kind of monsters Blaze Kongs actually are. Kane quietly explains that these creatures should never be anywhere near the Academy grounds. The appearance of even one Blaze Kong near this area would already be alarming, so the fact that an entire pack appears together is almost impossible to believe. Soon afterward, the Blaze Kongs begin devouring the corpse of the dead Grand Bear right in front of everyone. The disgusting sight nearly makes Miliana vomit while the other students also struggle to stomach the horrifying scene. At the same time, they realize that the other student groups deeper in the forest are probably in danger as well. Their fears quickly prove correct because every other group also encounters Blaze Kongs, and none of the students are remotely prepared to fight monsters at this level. Panic spreads rapidly as everyone realizes they need to find a teacher immediately. Meanwhile, the supervising teachers themselves are also confused because casualties suddenly begin appearing everywhere, and none of them understand what is happening. In the middle of all this chaos, there is still one completely insane person willing to stand directly in front of a Blaze Kong without fear, and that person is Neil. He laughs wildly while staring directly at the monster and asks if it truly wants to fight him. Instead of fear, excitement fills his face as he cracks his knuckles in anticipation. Everywhere else, the students desperately run away from the monsters. Meanwhile, Louis thinks carefully about the situation and realizes that if monsters that should never exist near the academy suddenly appear here, then something far more dangerous must be happening behind the scenes. At that exact moment, the senior hiding in the tree suddenly realizes that one of the Blaze Kongs notices his presence. Panicking, he quickly covers himself with soil armor for protection, but fear still fills his body. Before he can react further, the Blaze Kong smashes him with a single punch powerful enough to nearly crush his body into pieces. Just as the monster prepares to stomp him to death, Louis suddenly appears and kicks the Blaze Kong directly in the face, sending the giant creature flying backward. Without wasting another second, Louis orders Kara and Miliana to grab the injured senior and run away immediately. They obey his command at once. Even while retreating, they beg Louis to escape together with them, but Louis tells them not to worry because he will catch up soon enough. The Blaze Kong that Louis attacks becomes even more furious after being humiliated. Rage completely consumes the creature as it opens its mouth and launches an enormous fireball toward the group. Louis instantly warns everyone to take cover and dodge the incoming attack. The intensity of the flames is so overwhelming that Miliana and Kara barely survive the blast themselves. Faye quickly realizes that the Blaze Kongs are actively trying to kill them rather than simply attacking randomly. Kane understands that they no longer have any choice except to fight together if they want to survive. Using wind magic to accelerate his movements, Kane rushes toward the Blaze Kong with incredible speed and slashes at it with his dagger. Although the attack only manages to injure the monster slightly, it still succeeds in damaging it. At the same time, Faye charges forward with her spear and successfully wounds the creature's arm before striking again and forcing it down toward the ground. Kane watches in amazement at the sheer strength behind her attacks. Faye immediately follows up by activating her sacred spear technique and unleashing Crescent Fall, creating a tornado-like force aimed directly at the Blaze Kong's heart. For a moment, it seems like the attack succeeds. However, the creature suddenly opens its eyes again, and Faye realizes in horror that it uses crystal magic to reinforce itself. Refusing to stop, she attacks once more with her sacred spear and pierces directly through its body, triggering a violent eruption around them. Standing over the monster afterward, she feels a brief moment of pride in finally bringing it down. That moment disappears instantly when Kane screams at her not to lower her guard. The second Faye turns around, she sees the Blaze Kong standing directly above her despite everything she already does to it. The creature opens its mouth and unleashes another devastating stream of fire directly toward her. At the last possible second, Louis jumps in front of her and protects both of them with an ice shield. Immediately afterward, he creates massive ice lances erupting from the ground and traps the Blaze Kong in layers of freezing ice. For the first time in several moments, the group finally gets a brief second to breathe. Faye thanks Louis while still struggling to understand how the Blaze Kong survives even after its heart is pierced. However, Louis barely listens because his full attention remains fixed on the monster itself. He quickly realizes that the creature is preparing to unleash another fire breath attack. Without hesitation, he pulls Faye away once again, just as the Blaze Kong explodes out from the frozen ice lances surrounding it. To everyone's horror, the injuries previously inflicted by Kane and Faye begin healing almost instantly. The entire group stares in disbelief because while they hear that Blaze Kongs are incredibly aggressive monsters, none of them ever hear stories about such terrifying regeneration abilities. As Louis watches the monster recover, he suddenly realizes that this behavior reminds him of Neil. Just like Neil, the creature seems to grow stronger through pain and battle itself. Elsewhere in the forest, the teacher fights against several Blaze Kongs at once and becomes increasingly frustrated. No matter how many times he injures them, the monsters continue healing and growing stronger. He immediately realizes that something is deeply wrong with these creatures, and at this rate the students scattered throughout the forest will eventually be slaughtered. Back on the battlefield, Louis also understands how terrible the situation becomes, because more and more Blaze Kongs slowly surround their group from every direction. At the same time, Miliana and Kara struggle desperately to defend themselves, but eventually suffer injuries during the attacks. Nearby, the injured senior finally regains consciousness. Instead of panic, a sinister smile spreads across his face because, in his mind, everything is proceeding exactly according to plan. His mission is already complete. Now all he has to do is allow these defective monsters to finish eliminating Louis and the other commoners. The horrifying truth finally becomes clear. The entire situation is part of the senior's plan from the very beginning. Meanwhile, directly in front of Louis, the Blaze Kongs become even more violent and crazed. Kane watches in disbelief as the monsters begin using martial arcane armor techniques, just like trained fighters. The creatures attack again, while Louis desperately blocks their assaults. During the chaos, he realizes something terrifying. The Blaze Kongs are specifically targeting him above everyone else. Suddenly, one of the apes creates an enormous fireball almost the size of a small sun and aims it directly toward Louis. At the same moment, all the other Blaze Kongs surrounding him create massive fireballs of their own. Faye and Kane immediately rush toward Louis while desperately trying to shield him from the incoming attacks. Then, in the next instant, a gigantic explosion erupts deep within the forest with enough force to resemble a massive nuclear blast. Watching the destruction unfold from afar, the senior smiles with complete satisfaction because he believes his mission is finally accomplished. However, Louis is not someone who dies so easily. Right in the middle of the massive explosion, brilliant blue rays suddenly burst outward from within the flames themselves. Even the Blaze Kongs stop in confusion as they stare at the strange light emerging from the destruction. Moments later, a violent tornado erupts and completely overwhelms the sea of flames surrounding the area. Faye and Kane immediately recognize that blue energy, and both of them realize at once that Louis somehow survives one of the most devastating attacks ever unleashed against freshman students. Not only does he survive it, but he emerges from it in an even more terrifying state than before. Faye points out in disbelief that controlling mana over such a vast area purely through force of will is something that only masters or individuals above that level should be capable of doing. Kane finally understands that Louis has been hiding his true strength all this time. Meanwhile, Louis himself thinks about the strain spreading through his body. By accelerating the circulation of mana throughout himself, he temporarily forces his body into achieving mana control comparable to a master. However, the pressure and pain tearing through his body are becoming unbearable, and he knows he will reach his limit very soon. Because of that, he realizes that he has to end the battle as quickly as possible. With that thought in mind, he activates his breathing technique alongside his ice abilities and summons a massive tsunami of water around himself. The enormous waves surge outward and completely engulf the Blaze Kongs, forcing the monsters into confusion and panic. In the very next moment, the water instantly transforms into countless sharp icicles. Louis steps forward once, and the frozen battlefield allows him to accelerate his movements to terrifying speeds. He rushes toward one of the apes and strikes it with enough force to send it flying violently through the air. Another Blaze Kong attacks him immediately afterward, but Louis effortlessly defends himself by using his axiom acceleration technique before counterattacking two different apes at the same time. His speed becomes so overwhelming that the monsters can no longer track his movements properly. One moment he appears beside them, and the next instant he vanishes before striking somewhere else entirely. However, Louis is not merely attacking blindly. As he moves across the battlefield, he secretly creates an enormous 8-trigram pattern beneath the ground itself. At every point of the formation stands one of the Blaze Kongs trapped in position. Using his ice abilities, Louis locks every single monster into place simultaneously. Afterward, he rises high into the air and unleashes a relentless barrage of palm strikes that force all the trapped monsters deeper into the frozen formation. The ice seals them together in such a way that escape becomes impossible. Once the entire structure is complete, Louis lands on the ground and silently stares at what he creates. Suddenly, cracks spread across the massive frozen prison. Seconds later, the entire structure shatters apart, and every Blaze Kong trapped inside breaks into countless pieces like a shattered construction set collapsing into fragments. Watching this from afar, the hidden senior realizes with rage that there is no mistake anymore. Once again, Louis survives and wins against impossible odds. Meanwhile, Kane and Faye stare at the battlefield in total amazement, because Louis annihilates an entire pack of Blaze Kongs almost instantly. As the battle finally ends, Louis suddenly notices something strange. Wind and water mana both begin responding to him more naturally than before, almost as if they are becoming easier for him to control. When he finally drops back onto the ground, Kane congratulates him and admits that he never imagines ice attribute techniques could possess such terrifying power. Faye immediately interrupts both of them and tells them to stop acting like love-struck idiots because they still need to escape before another ambush happens. Louis quickly agrees and realizes that now is the perfect time to retreat since the teachers finally decide to intervene directly. Not far away, the senior secretly watches reinforcements arriving and realizes that continuing his plan is impossible now. Thinking quickly, he punches himself in the chest hard enough to injure himself before collapsing onto the ground so he can appear to be another helpless victim of the attack. Soon afterward, the principal himself arrives at the scene and orders every teacher to focus on protecting the students while eliminating the monsters. The entire group feels stunned seeing the principal appear personally on the battlefield. The principal immediately approaches Louis and his group and asks whether they are safe. Kane quickly explains that they survive entirely because of Louis. Faye adds that Louis defeats several masterclass Blaze Kongs completely on his own, and admits that without him, they likely would have all died. Hearing this leaves even the principal visibly puzzled because defeating monsters of that level alone is an incredible accomplishment. However, Louis tells him that something about the entire incident feels deeply wrong. He then shows the principal a frozen fragment from one of the Blaze Kongs trapped in ice. After examining it, the principal immediately tells Louis and the others to return to the academy, while he personally handles the rest of the situation. Later on, Louis visits the academy market and enters one of the shops. The shopkeeper tells him that after everything that happens during the mission, he accumulates a huge number of points and academy credits. However, she also looks confused because despite earning so much, he is still purchasing large amounts of mental recovery potions. She warns him that overusing such potions could seriously damage his body. Louis calmly replies that he is already aware of the risks. Before he can continue, Kylie suddenly appears and asks if she can speak with him privately for a moment. She reveals that after examining the corpses of the Blaze Kongs recovered from the academy incident, investigators discover traces of alchemy, magical drugs, and artificial modifications inside the monsters. That discovery proves Louis' suspicions are correct from the very beginning. Someone deliberately orchestrates the entire incident. Kylie explains that the principal suspect's enemy forces are behind everything. According to her, certain factions likely grow impatient because His Majesty and Lady Million are both growing older, yet no successor is officially chosen for the throne. Because of that, eliminating or controlling the children connected to important supporters becomes a logical political move. Since the Academy holds enormous influence within the Northern Empire, whichever side controls its future position gains a major advantage. Louis struggles to believe that such horrifying events happen because of a succession conflict. Even so, he cannot ignore the fact that the Blaze Kongs specifically target him during the battle. Kylie assures him that she will continue investigating the matter personally and promises to help however she can. Before leaving, she tells him that he must continue growing stronger because the principal clearly has high expectations for him. After she leaves, Louis stares silently at the potion in his hand and realizes once again that he truly does need to become stronger. Without hesitation, he drinks the entire potion in one gulp and quietly mutters to himself that this path is exactly what he always wants. Afterward, he begins thinking about his friends and the dangers now surrounding all of them. Elsewhere, the senior responsible for the attack reports directly to his father about the modified monsters. He explains that the experiment successfully confirms increased combat abilities within the designated range. However, the results still fall short of expectations, because although many of the modified monsters destroy themselves after death, several corpses are still recovered by the Academy. If the principal fully uncovers the truth, they could face enormous trouble. Despite that concern, the mastermind behind the operation remains calm. He explains that the experimental subjects originally come from the Baotan Empire, so even if the principal learns something, there is little he can actually prove. More importantly, the man stares at a picture of Louis and wonders who the boy truly is. The senior admits that he already suspects Louis for quite some time. According to him, the terrifying presence surrounding Louis is impossible to mistake, and he believes the principal is likely helping conceal the boy's real identity. No matter what the truth is, they both agree that Louis is becoming a dangerous obstacle to their plans. The villain calmly burns the picture of Louis before ordering his son to deal with the problem immediately. The senior calls Louis a cursed child capable of bringing complete destruction, and warns that if Louis continues interfering near their secret weapon, everything they build could collapse beyond repair. After hearing that, the villain orders his son to pass all the gathered information upward to the higher ranks of the Arcanist Association. According to him, the association will gladly make use of rumors surrounding the so-called cursed child. If the association learns that such a child might exist inside the academy itself, they will certainly launch their own investigation. In the villain's eyes, the enemy of his enemy naturally becomes an ally. The man behind the conspiracy is none other than Prince Vaughn himself, the Duke who leads the noble faction, and also Brian's father. Soon afterward, Louis heads toward the training grounds where he continues practicing his meditation techniques. Even while keeping his eyes completely closed, he remains fully aware of everything happening around him. Kane suddenly attacks him from behind, hoping to catch him off guard, but Louis instantly senses the movement and blocks the attack without difficulty. Not only does he defend himself perfectly, but he also counters Kane's desperate strikes with attacks of his own. In the middle of the exchange, another burst of power suddenly rushes directly toward Louis. This time the attack comes from the infamous Faye, who never knows how to hold back during a fight even when she is only sparring with friends in training. She throws herself into combat with complete intensity as always. However, just as before, Louis calmly reacts the moment the attack approaches him. An ice shield instantly appears right in front of him and blocks the incoming strike. The rest of the group watches closely, convinced that they finally corner him and land a decisive blow. They think Louis must have missed something this time. Miliana, however, quickly realizes that Louis already sees through the entire setup. As it turns out, she is completely right. Moments later, Louis calmly steps out from the cloud of dust and begins complimenting his friends instead of criticizing them. He praises Kane for how much faster and sharper his movements become, and tells him that he truly masters the hit and run tactics they practice together. He then compliments Faye for improving the power behind her spear techniques by adapting them from her unarmed combat style. Most importantly, he praises Miliana for cleverly hiding Kara's item inside the mud as part of their strategy. Louis admits that he is genuinely happy seeing how much stronger and faster all of his friends become in such a short amount of time. He even tells them that if he does not notice the abnormality through his cold sensibility, then their coordinated attack could have seriously overwhelmed him in an instant. Kane still looks irritated despite the praise because, in his mind, it means that all of them working together still fail to truly reach Louis. He points out that Louis escapes the entire attack without even receiving a scratch, which only proves that none of them can still catch up to him. Meanwhile, Faye remains fascinated by Louis' strange ability to sense movements around him through what he calls cold sense. She admits that she never hears of any technique remotely similar to it before. Louis explains that the technique relies on the circulation of mind and mana together, and he tells her that he is still researching and refining it himself. Even so, he promises that once she understands the proper principles behind it, he will teach her how to use it in future training sessions. While the group talks, Miliana hands Louis a recovery potion, and at the same time Faye suddenly tries to sneak in another punch toward him. Once again, she completely fails to land the hit. Miliana watches this and comments that sometimes Louis feels almost abnormal, like someone who does not truly belong to this world. The moment she says that, Louis nearly spits out his potion in shock. Nervousness flashes across his face as he quickly asks why she would say something like that while wiping the potion from his mouth. Miliana explains that it is because Louis openly shares his knowledge and techniques with others so freely. In this world, most people guard such information carefully within their own families instead of teaching it to outsiders. Because of that, she jokes that Louis must learn these ideas and values from another life entirely. Hearing that makes Louis scratch the back of his head awkwardly. He laughs a little and says that maybe it is simply because he grows up as a commoner and therefore has a different upbringing from nobles. He explains that everyone in their group constantly teaches each other new things anyway, so he believes it would be amazing if all of them continue becoming stronger together as one united team. Eventually, Faye tells everyone that it is time to head back because they still have martial arts classes waiting for them the next day. Before leaving, she warns Kane and Louis not to sneak off and cause trouble afterward. Kane immediately teases her in response, and before long the entire group begins leaving together while joking around with each other. However, Louis stays behind alone at the training grounds. He looks down at his bag and realizes that he is almost completely out of recovery potions once again, meaning he will need to exchange for more soon. Just as he prepares to drink another potion, Kylie suddenly appears and stops him. She immediately asks why he is trying to take another one after already drinking a mental recovery potion just yesterday. She reminds him that she already warns him before that constantly chugging those potions will eventually turn his brain into mush. Hearing her words makes Louis think deeply about everything weighing on his shoulders. He remembers his promise to his mother that he will become a grandmaster one day, so he can gain ownership of the orphanage away from the association and use that power to protect everyone important to him. Now that he realizes powerful enemies are beginning to target him directly, he becomes even more convinced that he absolutely must grow stronger no matter what. He quietly insists that he is careful enough not to overdo things and says that he will be fine. In his mind, these potions allow him to double the amount of training he can endure, and unlike others, he does not have the luxury of taking things slowly. Kylie looks at him seriously and asks whether he is truly certain about that. Right after Louis regains some energy from the potion, Kylie suddenly stiffens inside her armor because she senses an unusually powerful aura surging around him. Louis becomes confused by her reaction and asks whether he accidentally does something strange earlier, because for some reason his mana suddenly begins flowing through his body far more smoothly than before. Kylie struggles to respond because even she does not fully understand what she senses. Just as she is about to say something, she notices the large number of empty potion bottles scattered nearby. Instantly, irritation flashes across her face as she realizes that Louis drinks all of them by himself. Embarrassment appears on Louis's face while Kylie angrily explains that she checks the exchange records and discovers that this is already the 8th time this month that he exchanges for more potions. That means he is basically drinking at least 2 every single day. Louis argues back that if he truly wants to become a grandmaster as quickly as possible, then this is the only option available to him, especially since his body does not show any serious side effects so far. Kylie immediately argues against him and insists that becoming a grandmaster is not something achieved so easily. According to her, what he truly needs right now is proper foundational training, rather than relying on drug-like substances to push himself beyond his limits. She warns him that even if he cannot feel the damage yet, those potions could eventually destroy his insides completely and turn them into mush. Without wasting another second, Kylie grabs his hand firmly and tells him that before anything else, they are going to perform an aura and magic potion examination to check whether something is already going wrong inside his body. Eventually, Kylie takes Louis to have his blood examined, and Louis allows his blood to be placed into a special potion for testing, while the principal personally inspects it himself. After studying the results carefully, the principal realizes that the situation is extremely strange. There are absolutely no signs of mental recovery potion erosion affecting Louis's cerebrum. In fact, the opposite seems to be happening because his brain activity appears even more active and stimulated than before. Kylie immediately protests after hearing this because she insists that Louis clearly shows abnormal behavior recently. She points out that he suddenly becomes absent-minded at times, and only moments earlier an overwhelming amount of energy pours out from his body like something monstrous. She also explains that he releases such terrifying killing intent that even she feels unsettled by it. The principal admits that Kylie's concerns are valid and troubling, but considering the fact that Louis's magical power actually increases instead of deteriorating, he wonders if this phenomenon might be some kind of enlightenment unique to someone like Louis. At the same time, another possibility enters his mind, and he quietly considers whether this could be related to the mysterious traits connected to the cursed child. That thought immediately sparks the principal's curiosity even further, and he asks Louis to explain everything he experiences in greater detail. As the discussion continues, the principal begins talking about enlightenment itself and the origins of magical power, speaking about how magic is ruled by the goddess and questioning whether both humans and monsters are truly meant to possess such power in the first place. After thinking deeply about everything, the principal finally concludes that the world is already filled with countless strange mysteries that nobody fully understands. Because of that, he believes they should place this incident among those unexplained phenomena for now, rather than rushing toward conclusions too quickly. Kylie still tries arguing that something must definitely be wrong inside Louis's body, but the principal remains stern and starts walking away. However, after taking a few steps, he suddenly stops and turns back toward her. He explains that studies involving alchemy and magical potions are still incomplete and under constant research, meaning nobody fully understands how these potions truly affect the human body. Once Louis's unusual condition is added into the equation, everything becomes even more confusing than before. Kylie argues back that perhaps Louis is hiding other secrets as well. Meanwhile, Louis listens quietly to the entire discussion while thinking carefully to himself. In his mind, he realizes that the alchemy of this world simply fuses materials together in their natural state, which probably causes certain compositions to clash with one another. Because of that, he believes that if the unnecessary components are removed and a highly purified potion is created instead, then it should become possible to identify exactly which ingredient is causing harmful side effects. The next day, the principal gathers Kylie and Louis together again. Louis feels excited because the principal manages to gather so many materials and supplies for him within such a short amount of time. Kylie looks around at all the bottles and ingredients collected there and asks what exactly Louis plans to do with all of them, because the principal normally never handles potion making in such a strange way. Louis simply tells her to wait patiently because she will understand everything soon enough. Without wasting any time, he immediately begins working. After spending a long while experimenting and refining the materials, he finally creates 3 separate potions and proudly declares the process a success. The principal stares at the results in complete disbelief because he realizes that Louis successfully extracts every individual component contained within the original potion mixtures. At that moment, the principal becomes convinced that Louis truly possesses a divine-level talent. Excitement fills his voice as he asks Louis whether he would ever consider seriously studying magical potions under someone like him. He tells Louis that with talent of this level, he could someday become a leading authority in potion studies, and perhaps even surpass Lady Million herself one day. The principal genuinely believes such a future is possible for him. Louis respectfully replies that studying under the principal would be an incredible honor for him, and he would gladly learn from him. Hearing that makes the principal visibly proud, and the two of them begin bonding through their shared passion for knowledge and research. Kylie, however, clearly dislikes watching the growing connection forming between them. Later that night, Louis continues studying magical theory on his own, while thinking deeply about the nature of the potions he creates. He realizes that the magical energy contained inside those potions originates from the ingredients themselves. Since potions are made from natural plants, and plants require soil and water in order to grow, he begins connecting those ideas together. In his mind, earth and water naturally symbolize life itself. Suddenly, a powerful realization strikes him like lightning. At that exact moment, a violent reaction erupts across the table in front of him. Kylie stares in disbelief, because she cannot believe this strange phenomenon is happening yet again. Somehow, Louis reaches another moment of enlightenment deep within his heart. Instantly, massive vines and roots begin spreading wildly throughout the room. The principal watches in complete astonishment as enormous trees and forests suddenly emerge across the giant chamber itself. To him, there is simply no possible way that the true power hidden within potions could create something like this. At that moment, Louis calmly explains that the true power behind creation is not something grand or destructive. Instead, it is the simple act of giving moisture to the soil, nourishing life, and allowing new growth to sprout naturally into existence. Because of that understanding, Louis declares that this power should be called the wood element. Kylie looks completely confused after hearing the term wood element for the very first time. In response, Louis simply raises one finger and causes a beautiful flower to bloom before her eyes. As Kylie reaches toward it in curiosity, the flower suddenly releases dangerous pollen prepared to attack her. She fails to react in time, and the pollen causes redness to spread across her hand. Immediately afterward, the vines around the room transform into monstrous plants and begin attacking her directly. Furious at the sudden assault, Kylie unleashes her fire element and destroys the attacking vines, although the struggle leaves her with several minor injuries. Even while fighting them off, Kylie realizes something terrifying. Not only does Louis create entirely new plant life through magic, but he also controls those creations offensively against others, and the speed at which his abilities evolve is completely unbelievable. Louis calmly replies that creating plants is not even the true strength of the wood element. According to him, its greatest power lies somewhere else entirely. It is the power of healing itself. Hearing that immediately makes the principal realize something important. If Louis's theory is correct, then the principles behind recovery potions and healing balms may actually originate from the power of the wood attribute all along. Louis agrees and says that the possibility is extremely high. He explains that the major difference between ordinary plants and magical potions lies in whether elemental properties are present within them or not. The principal becomes increasingly excited as he realizes that composite elements, potions, and alchemy might all be fundamentally connected together. Because of this discovery, he immediately tells Louis that he will personally provide him with all the potion materials he needs for future experiments and research. Louis sincerely thanks him for the support, but the principal simply laughs and says there is no need for gratitude, because if Louis continues making discoveries like this, then he himself will probably end up handling all the exhausting work later on anyway. However, before the conversation can end, the principal decides to ask Louis one final question. He tells him that in the world of humans, strength alone is only one piece of the equation, and if someone truly wishes to gain the power necessary to change fate itself, then there are far more complicated truths waiting beyond simple strength alone. The principal then takes Louis into the forest where Louis activates his newly developed wood element and causes life to burst directly from the ground beneath them. Once again, the principal is visibly astonished because no matter how many times he witnesses this phenomenon, it still feels unnatural to him that such valuable plants can grow so quickly and so effortlessly through this method. Not only is Louis able to generate plants from almost anywhere on the ground, but he is also able to produce edible resources in a very short time. However, Lewis explains that this ability consumes far more magic power than he initially expects. He adds that the more valuable the plant is, the greater the amount of magic power it requires to create it. Because of that limitation, he admits that what he is currently demonstrating is already his maximum output for now. Even so, the principal remains pleased with the results and reflects that everything in this world always comes with a price. In his view, the true difference lies in how that price compares to others, and in Lewis's case, the cost is still far lower than what anyone would normally expect. The principal then states that Louis purifying potions, reducing their side effects, and even developing entirely new potions through wood attribute magic is an extraordinary achievement. He emphasizes that such progress is not something anyone else could accomplish, and it can only be achieved by someone with Lewis's unique abilities. Shortly afterward, when they leave the forest together, it is revealed that they have established an entire laboratory within the Candria Arcanist Academy, located inside an underground cave system. Within this hidden facility, they create special recovery potions, mana restoration potions, body enhancement potions, and mental recovery potions as part of their ongoing experiments. The principal then picks up one of the newly created potions and decides that it is time to test its side effects directly. He remarks that if Louis truly wishes to grow stronger quickly, then fighting strong opponents is the best form of training available. Because of that, he suggests testing the potions through combat between them. This idea immediately excites Louis, who sees it as the perfect opportunity. Without hesitation, he tells the principal not to hold back at all. He drinks the potion and immediately prepares to fight against the principal himself. A battle soon breaks out between them, and as it unfolds, Kylie watches everything with a stunned expression. She silently thinks that Lewis is truly a monster in his own way. Even if he is not necessarily evil or dangerous in intent, his nature is undeniably monstrous in terms of raw capability and growth. Later on, Lewis returns to his room and takes a shower while reflecting on the previous fight. He realizes that the principal did not hold back even slightly during their confrontation. In fact, if he had not developed the new potions beforehand, he would likely have been bedridden for an entire month due to the damage sustained. As he rests, he begins thinking about what kind of new potions he could develop next, and how he can further improve his abilities. However, when Lewis enters his room, Kara is already there, staring curiously at an empty potion bottle. Louis is immediately surprised and becomes slightly nervous upon seeing him there. Kara calmly asks what the bottle is, and Louis quickly lies, saying that the principal gave it to him for his safety, and that it is part of an approved technique for potion development. However, Kara does not believe this explanation at all. Without hesitation, he walks straight toward Louis, causing Louis to become increasingly nervous, thinking that he might have been caught. In reality, Kara immediately confesses that he is the one who created the potion. Louis quickly tries to deny it and claims the accusation is baseless, but no matter how much he tries to explain himself, it becomes obvious that he is a very poor liar. Eventually, he gives up and admits the truth, asking how Kara manages to figure it out. Kara explains that he observes the principal closely and deduces everything from subtle reactions and behavior. Lewis becomes slightly uneasy after realizing how perceptive Kara is, but he still asks him not to tell anyone about this because he wants to avoid unnecessary trouble. At that moment, Kara takes out a written contract and presents it to him. When Louis reads through it, he realizes that the terms are actually quite favorable. The agreement allows the potions to be diluted before distribution, which helps avoid drawing attention. Kara then places the potion inside a container and explains that Louis must allow the trading company to handle distribution in order to keep his identity hidden. In return, Louis will also receive profit from the arrangement, making it a mutually beneficial deal. After carefully reading everything, Lewis realizes that with Kara's support, he can obtain both resources and protection while continuing his research freely. He agrees that the offer is good, but insists on two conditions. First, the potion effects must be weakened before selling to prevent unnecessary complications. Second, the trading company must contribute support to the orphanage where he grew up. Kara immediately accepts both conditions, writes them directly into the contract, and hands it back to Lewis. They both sign it, formally sealing their agreement and forming a new partnership. As Louis leaves, he mentions that he will prepare more potions the next day and should rest early. Kara watches him leave before returning to his own dorm room. However, after both of them separate, two assassin-like pigeons suddenly infiltrate the dorm area and attempt to approach Kara from behind. Despite their stealth, Kara reacts immediately and defends himself. One of the intruders becomes frustrated and confused because she manages to enter without being detected, yet still fails to land an attack. The other quickly apologizes for the intrusion and explains that they only come to deliver urgent information before leaving again. At this moment, it is revealed that Kara is actually a girl who disguises her identity in order to attend the academy. She then hands the contract to her two apprentices, who react with confusion because they cannot understand why such a significant agreement is made for Louis specifically. One of them remarks that if this plan succeeds, their trading company could rise to become one of the most influential in the eastern regions. The other apprentice is equally impressed, but questions how a boy as young as Louis could even come up with such an arrangement. Kara silently acknowledges that Louis possesses extraordinary potential. The apprentices then ask what would happen if Louis eventually betrays them or supports another heir to the throne. In response, Kara states that this is precisely why she has a request for them. She explains that she intends to secure control over the orphanage because she believes Louis is fundamentally a kind person and deserves protection. After giving her orders, she dismisses both apprentices, who transform back into pigeons and fly away. Kara then looks up at the moon, thinking about how the midterm period is approaching soon. She realizes that they must accelerate their plans, because at this stage, all she truly hopes for is that Louis will eventually reveal his true identity to the heir to the throne.